Story. Chapter 1. The Fraying Threads. Jack Harrington set his laptop aside and rubbed his tired eyes. The digital clock on his nightstand showed 1:17 a.m., another late night analyzing network vulnerabilities for his cybersecurity firm. At 42, Jack had built a reputation as one of the best security consultants on the East Coast, a career born from 8 years in military intelligence where he had learned to detect patterns others missed. His company, Sentinel Security Solutions, protected everything from small businesses to government contractors from digital threats. He glanced at the empty space beside him. Melissa hadn't come to bed yet, which had become increasingly common over the past 6 months. Their relationship had grown distant, conversations reduced to logistics about their 8-year-old son Ethan's schedule or household necessities. Jack's mind drifted to when they first met 12 years ago at a charity gala. Melissa Rayburn had been vibrant and sharp-witted, working as a curator for the Boston Museum of Modern Art. Her blonde hair and blue eyes had caught his attention immediately, but it was her passionate knowledge of art history and her adventurous spirit that had captivated him. Within a year, they were married, and Ethan came along 3 years later. The transformation had been gradual. Melissa's growing disinterest in their shared activities, her sudden passion for fitness that took her to the gym at odd hours, the password changes on her phone, and the mysterious weekend art conferences that she returned from with vague details and no professional materials. Jack slipped out of bed and moved silently down the hallway of their colonial-style home in Winchester, Massachusetts. He paused at Ethan's room, gently pushing the door open to check on his son. Ethan slept peacefully, his dark hair, so like Jack's, tousled against the pillow, surrounded by his beloved space-themed bedding. A model of the solar system hung from the ceiling, a project they had completed together last summer. Jack's chest tightened with a fierce protectiveness. Whatever was happening with Melissa, Ethan deserved stability and happiness. Downstairs, he found her in the kitchen, laptop open, phone pressed to her ear. She startled when she saw him, quickly ending the call. "Work stuff," she explained, closing the laptop. "The Seattle exhibition is a nightmare." Jack noticed the slight flush in her cheeks, the way her fingers tapped nervously on the countertop. In his military days, he'd interrogated enough people to recognize deception. "At 1 in the morning?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral as he opened the refrigerator. "Time zones," she replied too quickly. "The collectors in Japan." Jack nodded, choosing not to press. He grabbed a bottle of water and leaned against the counter. "Ethan did great at his science presentation today. Mrs. Cooper said his volcano was the hit of the class." Melissa's expression softened genuinely at the mention of their son. "He was so excited about that. Did he remember to thank you for helping with the wiring for the lights?" "He did," Jack confirmed. This was the Melissa he remembered, the loving mother who had once spent hours creating elaborate birthday scavenger hunts for Ethan, who had taught their son to read before kindergarten. "I'm taking him shopping for new sneakers tomorrow after school," she said, gathering her things. "His current ones are practically falling apart." "I thought we were doing pizza night tomorrow," Jack reminded her. "We've been planning to try that new place near the lake." Ethan's been counting down the days. A flash of annoyance crossed Melissa's face. "Right, I forgot. The shoes can wait until Saturday." As she headed upstairs, Jack's instincts prickled. Melissa never forgot plans involving Ethan, and she'd been checking her watch repeatedly during their brief conversation, as if expecting something, or someone, at a specific time. The next morning over breakfast, Jack observed Melissa's unusual attentiveness to Ethan, asking detailed questions about his friends and teachers that she normally wouldn't. "Mrs. Cooper's your favorite teacher, right?" she asked, refilling Ethan's orange juice. Ethan nodded enthusiastically. "She's awesome. She lets me borrow books from her special collection, and she said my science project might win the district competition." "That's wonderful, sweetie," Melissa said, shooting a quick glance at Jack. "But remember, teachers sometimes exaggerate to make kids feel good." Jack raised an eyebrow at the unnecessary comment. Mrs. Cooper had been nothing but supportive of Ethan, recognizing his advanced reading level and interest in science. After dropping Ethan at school, Jack headed to his downtown office where his business partner and former military colleague, Mike Foster, was waiting with fresh coffee and concern etched on his weathered face. "You look like hell," Mike observed bluntly, pushing a cup toward Jack. "Still not sleeping?" "Something's wrong at home," Jack admitted, closing the office door. Melissa's behavior has changed dramatically. Last night, I caught her on a mysterious call at 1 in the morning. Mike's expression darkened. At 45, with graying temples and the physique of someone who still maintained military fitness standards, he projected an intimidating presence that belied his loyalty to friends. "You think she's having an affair?" "I don't have proof," Jack replied. "But my gut says yes. And my gut's rarely wrong. Want me to run background on recent contacts?" Mike offered. Before joining Jack's business, he'd worked in private intelligence with connections in law enforcement. Jack hesitated. "Not yet. I need more information first." That afternoon, Jack received a call from Sentinel's newest client, Westfield Financial. Their security director had discovered suspicious activity that needed immediate attention. The issue would require Jack to fly to Chicago the following week. "I'll be gone for 3 days," he informed Melissa that evening as they prepared dinner. "Tuesday through Thursday." She nodded absently, stirring pasta sauce. "That's fine. Ethan and I can manage." Jack noticed she didn't ask for details about the trip, unlike her usual questions about his work travel. Instead, she seemed almost relieved. During dinner, Ethan chattered about his upcoming field trip to the Boston Science Museum. "Mrs. Cooper says we'll get to see the lightning demonstration. Can you come as a chaperone, Dad?" "When is it?" Jack asked, already mentally rearranging his schedule. "Next Friday," Ethan replied excitedly. Melissa interrupted. "I've already volunteered as a chaperone, remember? I told your teacher last week." Jack caught the momentary confusion on Ethan's face. "No, you didn't. You said you were too busy with the Seattle thing." An awkward silence fell over the table. Melissa recovered quickly with a forced laugh. "I must have forgotten to tell you, I cleared my schedule. Pregnancy brain never really goes away, does it?" Later that night, after Ethan went to bed, Jack checked their shared family calendar on his tablet. There was no field trip listed for the following Friday, but there was an entry for Thursday that caught his attention. M&E, doctor appointment 2:30. Melissa hadn't mentioned any doctor's appointment for Ethan. Jack's military training had taught him the value of thorough reconnaissance before action. Over the next few days, he began cataloging Melissa's behavioral changes, noting inconsistencies in her stories. He installed a location tracking app on their family iPad that Ethan used for games and homework. The tablet occasionally traveled with Melissa when she took Ethan on outings. On Saturday, the tracking app showed Melissa and Ethan visiting not the mall as she'd claimed, but an office building in downtown Boston. A quick search revealed one of the tenants was Blackwood International Exports, a company Jack had never heard Melissa mention. The following Tuesday, Jack pretended to leave for his Chicago trip, hugging Ethan tightly and telling him to be good for his mom. "When will you be back, Dad?" Ethan asked, clinging to Jack's neck. "Before you know it, buddy," Jack assured him, noticing Melissa checking her phone impatiently by the door. 3 days will fly by. Instead of heading to the airport, Jack drove to a hotel on the other side of town where Mike was waiting with surveillance equipment. "You sure about this?" Mike asked as they set up in the room. Jack nodded grimly. "Something's not right. Melissa's planning something that involves Ethan, and I need to know what." Through the location app, they tracked Melissa and Ethan to a cafe near Boston Common, where they were joined by a man Jack didn't recognize, tall, dark-haired, expensively dressed in a tailored suit. Using a directional microphone from their discreet position across the street, they picked up fragments of conversation. "Everything's arranged," the man said in a smooth voice with a slight accent. "The package arrives tomorrow. Tickets are confirmed for Thursday evening." "Ethan's excited about the trip," Melissa replied. "He thinks we're just going on vacation." "And Jack?" the man asked. "Chicago until Thursday night. By the time he realizes, we'll be long gone." Jack's blood ran cold as the implications sank in. His wife was planning to take their son and disappear while he was supposedly away on business. The man reached across the table, placing his hand over Melissa's. "Soon we'll be together permanently, with no more hiding." As they continued watching, Jack used his phone to photograph the man, then ran the image through a facial recognition program he'd developed for Sentinel. The results came back within minutes. Derek Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood International Exports. "I need everything you can find on this guy," Jack told Mike, jaw clenched in determination. Mike nodded. "I'll call in some favors. But Jack, if they're planning to leave the country with your son, we may need to get authorities involved." "Not yet," Jack decided. "If we move too soon, They might accelerate their plans or go underground. I need to know exactly what they're planning and where they're going. Then I'll stop them. As they continued their surveillance, Jack had no idea that the situation was far more dangerous than a simple affair and custody dispute. The pieces were still coming together, but one thing was clear: he would not let anyone take his son. Chapter 2. Beneath the Surface. Jack and Mike established a surveillance rotation, allowing Jack to return home late that night as if he'd forgotten important documents for his Chicago trip. Melissa was already asleep, or pretending to be, when he quietly entered their bedroom to grab his forgotten files. The next morning, Mike called with information on Derek Blackwood. "This guy's story doesn't add up," Mike reported. "Blackwood International specializes in art and antiquities imports, which explains the connection to Melissa. Company looks legitimate on paper, but I've got contacts saying there are red flags, shipments that don't match manifests, unusual cash flows." "Criminal?" Jack asked, gazing out the hotel window. "Nothing proven. He's well-connected, donates to the right charities, sits on museum boards. Perfect cover for something shady. There's more. He's divorced. Ex-wife lives in Geneva. No custody agreement because they never had kids, but here's the kicker: she filed for divorce citing emotional and physical abuse." Jack's jaw tightened. This was the man his wife was planning to take Ethan to live with? Any travel patterns? Regular trips to South America, Mediterranean, and Southeast Asia. Always first class, always returning with art shipments. And get this, he owns property in Belize, non-extradition country. The picture forming in Jack's mind turned increasingly dark. What about the package they mentioned? Working on it. Could be legitimate. Art shipment, documents. Could be something worse. Throughout the day, Jack continued monitoring Melissa's movements. She took Ethan to school, then went to a bank downtown where she remained for over an hour. Using his contacts, Jack later discovered she had emptied their joint savings account, nearly $50,000. When she picked up Ethan from school, Mrs. Cooper approached her in the parking lot. Jack, watching from a distance with binoculars, observed a tense conversation. Melissa appeared defensive, quickly ushering Ethan into the car. That evening, as Jack pondered his next move, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Harrington? This is Linda Cooper, Ethan's teacher." Jack straightened. "Yes, Mrs. Cooper. What can I do for you?" There was hesitation before she continued. "I apologize for calling, but I'm concerned about something Ethan mentioned today during free drawing time. He drew a picture of an airplane and told me he was going on a special trip with his mom and someone named Derek. When I asked about you, he seemed confused and said you weren't invited. Is everything all right at home?" Jack's heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. "Ethan does have an active imagination. What else did he say about this trip?" "That's what concerns me," Mrs. Cooper replied. "He said, my son's teacher called. He says your wife is planning to leave the country with him tomorrow. When I asked if you knew about this trip, he said his mom told him it was a surprise and he shouldn't tell you yet. Mr. Harrington, as a mandated reporter, I need to ensure Ethan's welfare." "I understand completely," Jack interrupted. "There's been a miscommunication. Melissa and I are separated but handling co-parenting amicably. I believe she's planning a vacation during her custody time, but there must be confusion about the details. I'll speak with her immediately." After reassuring the teacher and thanking her for her vigilance, Jack called Mike. "They're moving tomorrow, not Thursday. We need to accelerate." "I've got something," Mike responded. "Blackwood received a shipment today from Colombia, declared as historical documents. My contact at Customs says it wasn't inspected due to diplomatic connections. Could be passports, travel documents. I need to get into the house while Melissa's out," Jack decided. "Can you create a diversion tomorrow morning? Something that will get her out of the house for at least an hour?" "Consider it done." The next morning, Jack watched from down the street as Melissa received a call that sent her hurrying from the house after the school bus picked up Ethan. Mike had arranged for the museum to contact her about an emergency with the Seattle exhibition that required her immediate attention downtown. Once she left, Jack entered their home using his key. In the master bedroom, he searched for evidence, finding nothing until he checked beneath Melissa's side of the mattress. There, taped securely, was a manila envelope containing 3 passports, none in their real names. The photos showed Melissa, Ethan, and Derek with false identities. Alexander and Maria Thompson with their son Christopher. all listed as citizens of Canada. A chill ran down Jack's spine as he photographed each document, then replaced them exactly as he'd found them. In Melissa's closet, he discovered a half-packed suitcase hidden beneath winter coats. Among the clothing were several of Ethan's favorite items and a small pouch containing diamond jewelry, easily transportable wealth. In her desk drawer, he found printed flight confirmations, Boston to Mexico City, departing the following evening. One-way tickets. Jack's military training kicked in, emotions giving way to tactical planning. This wasn't just about an affair or custody dispute. The fake passports, the emptied bank account, the one-way tickets to a connecting destination, all pointed to a permanent disappearance. As he prepared to leave, a final sweep of Melissa's office revealed a hidden burner phone tucked inside a hollowed-out art history book. The text messages confirmed his worst fears. Melissa and Derek had been planning this escape for months. Worse, there were references to using Ethan as leverage for something called the Veracruz Project. Whatever they were planning, Jack wouldn't let them use his son as a pawn. He carefully replaced everything and left the house, mind already formulating his counterstrike. That afternoon, while Melissa took Ethan to his weekly swimming lesson, Jack met with a family court lawyer, presenting the evidence he'd gathered. "This is deeply concerning," attorney Rebecca Walsh said, reviewing the photos of fake passports. "We can file for an emergency custody order based on flight risk, but the courts move slowly. By the time we get before a judge, they'll be gone," Jack finished grimly. "That's why I need another approach." Jack's next stop was an old military contact now working with Homeland Security. Commander Samuel Davis had served with Jack in Afghanistan, where Jack's intelligence work had once saved Davis's entire unit from an ambush. "I'm calling in that favor, Sam," Jack said after explaining the situation. "I need to stop them at the airport, not before. If we move too soon, they might find another way out with my son." Davis studied the evidence, particularly the fake passports. "These are high-quality forgeries, not amateur work. Your wife's boyfriend has serious connections. This goes beyond a custody issue, Jack. I'll alert Border Patrol and airport security, but I need you to understand. If this guy is who I suspect he might be, this could get dangerous." "What aren't you telling me?" Jack pressed. Davis hesitated. "There's an ongoing investigation into art importers suspected of using their businesses as fronts for other activities. Blackwood's name has come up, though nothing's been proven. His diplomatic connections make him difficult to touch." "What kind of other activities?" "Nothing I can discuss officially. But watch your back, Jack. And your sons." Armed with this information, Jack returned to surveillance. Through the tracking app, he followed Melissa and Ethan to a children's clothing store where she purchased several new outfits. Later, they met Blackwood at his downtown office, staying for over 2 hours. When they emerged, Jack used the directional microphone to catch Blackwood's parting words to Melissa. "Tomorrow night, everything changes. Remember, once we're past security, follow my lead exactly. No matter what happens or what you hear, stick to the plan." That night, Jack could barely contain his rage and anxiety knowing his son was sleeping under the same roof as someone plotting to take him away forever. He waited until 3 a.m., when he was certain Melissa was asleep, then silently entered the house through the garage door by disabling the electronic lock with a device he'd developed for Sentinel. Moving ghost-like through the darkened house, he crept to Ethan's room, gently waking his son with a hand over his mouth to prevent any exclamation. "Dad," Ethan whispered when Jack removed his hand. "I thought you were in Chicago." "I came back early," Jack explained softly. "I need you to listen carefully, buddy. This is important. Like a secret mission, okay?" Ethan nodded, eyes wide with excitement. "A mission? Like your army days?" "Something like that. Mom told you about a trip tomorrow, right?" Ethan nodded again. "With Derek. We're going on an airplane to see pyramids. Mom says we might stay for a really long time." Jack struggled to keep his expression neutral. "Here's the mission. Go on the trip just like Mom planned. But if anyone asks, especially Mom or Derek, I'm still in Chicago and don't know about the trip. Can you do that?" "I guess," Ethan replied, confusion evident in his young face. "But why can't you come too?" "I'll be there," Jack promised, hugging his son tightly. "When you least expect it. Like a surprise. But it has to be our secret, okay? Super secret. Lives depend on it." "Lives?" Ethan's eyes widened. "Like whose lives?" Jack realized he'd gone too far. Just an expression, buddy. But this is very important. Trust me. Always, Dad. Ethan wrapped his arms around Jack's neck. One more thing, Jack whispered. No matter what happens tomorrow, remember I love you more than anything in this world, and I will always come for you. Always. After Ethan fell back asleep, Jack slipped back out of the house with a heavier heart but strengthened resolve. Tomorrow would end one of two ways. Either his family would be restored with Melissa and Blackwood facing justice, or Jack would become a different kind of man entirely, one willing to cross lines he'd never imagined to protect his son. Chapter 3. The Gathering Storm. Morning brought a flurry of activity at the Harrington household, all of which Jack monitored remotely through security cameras he'd secretly installed months ago for home protection. Melissa moved with nervous energy, checking and rechecking documents, making last-minute calls on her burner phone, and carefully reviewing a detailed itinerary with multiple connecting flights. Jack, meanwhile, enacted the next phase of his plan. He met with Commander Davis at a secure location to finalize their operation. Boston Logan International, Terminal E, United Airlines Flight 837 to Mexico City. Departing 8:45 p.m., Jack confirmed. They'll be traveling under false identities as the Thompson family. Davis nodded, reviewing the operational details on his tablet. My team will be in position throughout the terminal. We'll have agents at check-in, security, and the gate. Facial recognition is already programmed with their photos, both real identities and aliases. Remember, we let them get all the way to boarding, Jack emphasized. I need irrefutable evidence they were attempting to leave the country with my son using fraudulent documentation. Understood, Davis replied, though his expression remained troubled. Jack, there's something you should know about Blackwood. Our intelligence suggests he's not just involved in illegal art imports. The Bureau believes he's connected to an international network that. The commander's secure phone rang, interrupting his revelation. After a brief conversation, he turned to Jack with increased urgency. Change of plans. We've received intelligence that Blackwood has chartered a private flight from a smaller airfield in Bedford. It's scheduled for 7:30 p.m., over an hour before the commercial flight you identified. Jack's mind raced. It's a decoy. The commercial booking is misdirection in case anyone's looking for them. Exactly. And it nearly worked. We need to split resources now. This development complicated matters significantly. Private terminals had less security, fewer witnesses, and faster processing. If Melissa and Blackwood reached that plane with Ethan, stopping them would become exponentially more difficult. I need to know immediately if they deviate from the expected route to Logan, Jack insisted. I've got a surveillance team ready, Davis assured him. And Jack, we've authorized a tactical unit for the private airfield scenario. This is no longer just about fraudulent passports. Throughout the day, Jack maintained communication with Mike, who had positioned himself near the Harrington home to track Melissa's movements. Around noon, Jack received a text from his son, a rare occurrence since Ethan only used his kid-friendly phone for emergencies. Dad, we're packing a lot of stuff. Mom says don't bring winter clothes. I'm scared. Jack's chest tightened. He called Ethan immediately. Hey, buddy, he said when Ethan answered, keeping his voice casual. Got your text. Everything okay? I guess. Ethan replied quietly. Mom's acting weird. She keeps saying we're going on vacation, but she packed all my favorite books and toys. And my birth certificate. Do you need your birth certificate for vacation? Sometimes, Jack said carefully, aware Melissa might be listening. For international trips. Remember our secret mission? Yeah, Ethan whispered. Derek's coming over soon with special papers. Mom told me I have to practice answering to a different name. Is that part of the mission? Jack struggled to maintain composure. Yes, it is. You're doing great, Ethan. Remember what I promised. That you'll come for me, Ethan recited. Mom's calling. I have to go. After the call ended, Jack immediately updated Davis. They're definitely using the false identities. And Blackwood is bringing additional documents to the house. We've got movement, Davis reported. Blackwood just left his office with a diplomatic pouch, not subject to normal searches. Heading toward your neighborhood. Jack's jaw tightened. The pieces were falling into place, but not quickly enough for his comfort. A diplomatic pouch suggested Blackwood had government connections, explaining how he'd obtained such convincing false documentation. By late afternoon, Mike reported that Melissa was loading luggage into her SUV while Blackwood supervised. Ethan appeared confused but compliant, clutching his tablet and backpack. Jack checked the location tracking app and confirmed the tablet was with Ethan. At least he could follow their movements. They're on the move, Mike reported at 5:12 p.m., heading east on Route 3. That could be toward either Logan or Bedford. Jack's pulse quickened. Stay with them as long as you can without being spotted. The next 30 minutes were excruciating as Jack tracked their progress while coordinating with Davis. The SUV took a turn-off that could lead to either destination, maintaining the ambiguity of their plans. At 5:47 p.m., Mike's voice came through with crystal clarity. They've turned toward Bedford. It's the private airfield. Jack immediately redirected to the smaller airport, while Davis mobilized his team to the new location. The tactical response would be limited by the private nature of the facility, requiring careful timing and irrefutable evidence of criminal activity. As Jack approached Bedford, he received a final text from Ethan. We're at a small airport. No security lines. Derek says we're taking a special plane because we're special people. I'm pretending to be Christopher like you said. Jack's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His son was being coached to answer to a false identity, about to board a private plane to an unknown destination with falsified travel documents. The legal implications were severe, but Jack's primary concern remained Ethan's safety. Upon arriving at the private aviation terminal, Jack parked at a distance and approached Davis's unmarked vehicle. Situation update? He demanded, sliding into the passenger seat. Davis handed him a tactical radio and earpiece. They've checked in as the Thompson family. Blackwood presented diplomatic credentials that prevented normal security protocols. The jet is being fueled now, registered to a shell company we've linked to Blackwood International. Filed flight plan shows Mexico City, but we have reason to believe that's another misdirection. Strike team. In position, but holding. We need them to make a clear attempt to board with fraudulent documentation. If Blackwood's diplomatic status extends to his companions, this gets legally complicated. Jack nodded grimly. Then we make sure there's no ambiguity. I'll approach once they're on the tarmac. If Melissa identifies me or Ethan calls me dad, that instantly invalidates their claim to be the Thompson family. Too risky, Davis objected. If Blackwood is who we suspect, he won't hesitate to use violence. My son is about to disappear forever with people using false identities, Jack stated flatly. Risk is irrelevant. Before Davis could respond, the radio crackled with an urgent update. Subjects are proceeding to the tarmac. Repeat, subjects moving to aircraft. Through binoculars, Jack observed the small group walking toward a sleek private jet. Melissa held Ethan's hand tightly, while Blackwood strode confidently ahead, gesturing toward the waiting aircraft. A pilot stood by the stairs, checking documents. Now, Jack said, opening the car door. Move your team into position. As Jack approached the chain-link fence separating the terminal from the tarmac, he caught fragments of conversation carried by the evening breeze. Final checks complete, Mr. Thompson, the pilot was saying. We're cleared for immediate departure. Excellent, Blackwood replied. The sooner we're airborne, the better. Jack reached the security gate, where a guard stepped forward to block his path. Sir, this is a restricted area. Jack pulled out his military ID. National security matter. That boy is being taken against custody orders. The guard hesitated, then stepped aside as Davis approached, flashing his Homeland Security credentials. On the tarmac, Jack moved purposefully toward the group, now at the foot of the boarding stairs. Ethan spotted him first, his face lighting up. Dad! He shouted, breaking free from Melissa's grasp and running toward Jack. Melissa whirled around, her face draining of color. Jack? What? How? Blackwood's reaction was instant and alarming. He reached inside his jacket, his expression hardening from surprise to dangerous calculation. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. Davis's voice boomed through a megaphone as his team converged from multiple positions. In the chaos that erupted, Jack focused solely on reaching Ethan, who was running toward him across the tarmac. Melissa stood frozen in shock, while Blackwood appeared to be weighing his options, hand still inside his jacket. Don't, Davis warned, his weapon trained on Blackwood. Whatever you're thinking, it's not worth it. Ethan crashed into Jack's arms, clinging tightly to his neck. You came, just like you promised. Always, Jack whispered, lifting his son and backing away from the confrontation. Melissa found her voice, advancing toward Jack. You don't understand. We had to leave. Derek promised us a new life. Safety. Safety. Jack challenged. With fake passports? Lying to our son? Violating custody laws. Federal agents surrounded Blackwood, ordering him to slowly remove his hand from his jacket. When he complied, he held what appeared to be a diplomatic passport. This is an outrage, Blackwood declared smoothly. I have diplomatic immunity. This is harassment of a foreign dignitary and his guests. Commander Davis stepped forward, unimpressed. Derek Blackwood, we have a warrant for your arrest for multiple violations of federal law, including identity fraud, attempting to transport a minor across international borders without parental consent, and, he paused significantly, suspected involvement in human trafficking across 3 states. The color drained from Melissa's face. What? No, that's impossible. Derek is an art dealer. Among other enterprises, Davis replied coldly. Mrs. Harrington, you're also under arrest for identity fraud, conspiracy to violate federal custody laws, and potential conspiracy in Mr. Blackwood's other activities, pending investigation. As federal agents handcuffed Blackwood and began reading him his rights, Jack carried Ethan away from the scene, the boy's face buried against his shoulder. Is Mom in trouble? Ethan asked in a small voice. Yes, buddy, Jack answered honestly. But you're safe now. That's what matters. Over Ethan's head, Jack watched as Melissa was placed in handcuffs, her expression transitioning from shock to anger to devastating realization as she finally understood the magnitude of what she'd nearly done and who she'd nearly done it with. The storm had broken, but Jack knew from experience that the aftermath often revealed even greater damage than the tempest itself. As he held his trembling son, he steeled himself for the battles still to come. Custody hearings, criminal proceedings, and the long process of helping Ethan heal from this trauma. But for now, his son was safe in his arms, Blackwood was in custody, and Melissa's betrayal had been stopped before Ethan disappeared forever. The first phase of Jack's mission was complete. What came next would require a different kind of strength. Chapter 4. The Aftermath. 24 hours after the dramatic airport confrontation, Jack sat in his attorney's office, still processing the revelations that had emerged. Rebecca Walsh reviewed her notes while Jack stared out the window at Boston's skyline. Ethan safely engaged with a tablet in the adjacent room. To summarize, Rebecca said, Melissa has been charged with identity fraud, conspiracy to violate custody orders, and child endangerment. She's been denied bail due to flight risk. Blackwood faces considerably more serious charges, including human trafficking and multiple counts of fraud. The diplomatic immunity claim was rejected. Apparently his credentials were as fraudulent as the passports. Jack turned from the window. And Ethan, you've been granted emergency temporary sole custody. Given the circumstances, I anticipate this becoming permanent. Melissa may eventually be permitted supervised visitation, depending on what the investigation reveals about her knowledge of Blackwood's activities. The phrase Blackwood's activities hung in the air. Commander Davis had briefed Jack privately on the broader investigation into Derek Blackwood, revealing a sophisticated operation that used art imports to mask a human trafficking network. Young women from South America and Eastern Europe, promised modeling or art apprenticeships in the United States, instead found themselves trapped in exploitation. What I still don't understand, Jack said, is how Melissa became involved with someone like Blackwood. She's always been passionate about art, but this. People show us what they want us to see, Rebecca replied. According to the preliminary investigation, Blackwood cultivated relationships with museum professionals across the country. Charming, knowledgeable about art, generous with donations, the perfect cover. But to agree to flee the country with him, Jack pressed. To take our son. Rebecca hesitated. The FBI is investigating whether Melissa was being coerced. There's evidence Blackwood employed manipulation tactics with other women in his orbit. Gifts followed by demands. Charm followed by subtle threats. Classic predator behavior. Jack's jaw tightened. While part of him wanted to believe Melissa had been manipulated rather than willingly betraying their family, the planning she participated in suggested otherwise. What do I tell Ethan? He asked, voicing his most pressing concern. He's already asking when he can see his mother. The truth, but age-appropriate, Rebecca advised. Ethan needs stability and honesty now more than ever. A child psychologist would be beneficial. I can recommend several who specialize in family trauma. After the meeting, Jack took Ethan for ice cream at his favorite shop near Boston Common. Despite the boy's initial excitement about a weekday treat, his usual enthusiasm was subdued. "Is Mom in jail?" Ethan asked suddenly, looking up from his barely touched chocolate cone. Jack had prepared for this question, but still found himself choosing his words carefully. "Yes, she is. There's an investigation happening right now. Mom made some bad choices, especially about Derek." "Derek said we were going to live in a palace," Ethan mentioned, "with servants and swimming pools. He said you couldn't come because you wouldn't fit in with important people." Jack's grip tightened on his water glass. "What else did Derek tell you?" "That I'd have a new name and story," Ethan continued. "He made me practice saying I was Christopher Thompson from Canada. Said it was a game at first, but then got mad when I messed up." The casual revelation of psychological manipulation made Jack's blood boil, but he maintained a calm exterior for his son's sake. "Did Mom know about this game?" Ethan nodded. "She said it was important I learn fast. That we couldn't go to our new home if I couldn't remember my new name." He looked down, voice dropping to a whisper. "I didn't want a new name. Or a new dad." Jack moved to sit beside Ethan, pulling him into a hug. "You will always be Ethan Harrington, and I will always be your dad. That's never going to change." That night, after putting Ethan to bed in their home, now secured with additional measures Mike had installed, Jack received a call from Commander Davis. "We've completed the initial search of Blackwood's residence and offices," Davis reported. "Jack, this is bigger than we thought. Evidence suggests Blackwood was using his art business to move people across borders, adults mainly, but recently children too. He has properties in 6 countries, most in locations with limited extradition agreements." "And Melissa's involvement?" Jack asked, dreading the answer. Davis hesitated, still determining. "We found a safe in Blackwood's office containing documentation on what they called the Veracruz Project. Appears to be a compound in Mexico being prepared for multiple families with children. Your wife and son were listed as primary assets." "Assets," Jack repeated, the word landing like a physical blow. "The FBI believes Blackwood was establishing a remote community, possibly for wealthy clients seeking to disappear with children in custody disputes. Your wife may have been a test case, or perhaps leveraged to ensure your cooperation for something related to your cybersecurity expertise." Jack considered this new angle. Sentinel Security protected several government contractors with classified projects. Had Blackwood targeted Melissa to ultimately gain access to Jack's professional connections? "There's more," Davis continued. "We found extensive research on you, military history, security clearances, current client list. This wasn't random, Jack. Blackwood, or whoever he works for, selected your family specifically." After ending the call, Jack spent hours reviewing his own security measures, checking for breaches or surveillance. Around 2 a.m., he received a text from an unknown number. "You've made a terrible mistake. This isn't over. Everyone has vulnerabilities." Jack immediately initiated security protocols, activating motion sensors throughout the house and checking on Ethan, who slept peacefully. After forwarding the message to Davis, Jack settled into a chair in Ethan's room, service weapon within reach. Whoever had sent the threat would find that Jack Harrington's vulnerabilities were now his greatest strengths. The following days brought escalating complications. News of the airport arrest leaked to local media, initially reported as a routine customs enforcement action. By the weekend, however, investigative journalists had connected Blackwood to ongoing human trafficking investigations, and the story exploded nationally. Prominent art dealer arrested in trafficking, sting museum curator, and son rescued from international trafficking ring. The sensationalized headlines painted Melissa as both victim and unwitting accomplice, creating a public narrative at odds with what Jack had witnessed. Her attorneys seized this narrative, giving statements suggesting Melissa had been psychologically manipulated by a predator and was cooperating fully with authorities to bring Blackwood to justice. Jack maintained media silence, focusing instead on establishing a new routine for Ethan. He arranged to work remotely, enrolled Ethan in therapy, and coordinated with the school to address the inevitable questions from classmates and parents. Mrs. Cooper proved invaluable during this transition, creating a supportive environment in the classroom and meeting with Jack regularly to discuss Ethan's emotional state. Her initial concern had possibly saved Ethan from disappearing forever, a fact Jack acknowledged with profound gratitude. "I was just doing my job," she insisted during one meeting. Children often reveal through casual comments what parents try to hide. When Ethan mentioned leaving and never coming back, alarm bells rang. "You did more than your job," Jack countered. "You may have saved his life." A week after the arrests, Jack received a formal request through Rebecca Walsh. Melissa wanted to see Ethan. The prosecutor's office had indicated that her cooperation in the case against Blackwood might merit consideration during her own proceedings, and her attorney was pushing for supervised visitation as a demonstration of good faith. Jack's initial reaction was a hard refusal, but Ethan's therapist, Dr. Sarah Benson, offered a more nuanced perspective. "Children need closure, even when relationships are damaged," she explained during their session. "A supervised visit, in a controlled setting, might help Ethan process what's happened. He has questions only his mother can answer." Against his protective instincts, Jack agreed to a single visit at the detention facility, with Dr. Benson present as a support for Ethan. The night before the scheduled visit, however, another anonymous text arrived. "The boy is the key. Arrangements remain in place. Friends are watching." Jack immediately contacted Davis, who increased security around both the house and the detention center. Despite warnings that this might be a scare tactic rather than a credible threat, Jack found himself checking and rechecking security systems, reviewing evacuation plans, and sleeping in Ethan's room. The morning of the visit brought unexpected news. Melissa had been transported to the hospital overnight after an apparent suicide attempt. While her condition was stable, the visit was postponed indefinitely. She left a note. Davis informed Jack privately, claimed she never knew Blackwood's true business, that she truly believed they were starting a new life together. Said she couldn't face Ethan knowing she'd nearly delivered him into danger. "Do you believe her?" Jack asked, conflicted by the implications. Davis's expression remained professionally neutral. "The investigation is ongoing. But between you and me, her phone records show communications with members of Blackwood's network that contradict her claim of ignorance. The suicide attempt could be genuine remorse, or a strategic move to build sympathy." That evening, as Jack helped Ethan with homework, the boy asked the question Jack had been dreading. "Why did Mom want to take me away from you?" Jack set aside the math worksheet, giving Ethan his full attention. "That's complicated, buddy. Sometimes adults make choices based on feelings rather than what's right. Mom got involved with Derek, who wasn't a good person, and he convinced her to do something very wrong. But why did she listen to him instead of you?" Ethan persisted. "You're nicer than Derek. He was always checking his phone and getting mad about stuff." "People can be fooled," Jack explained carefully. "Derek showed Mom one version of himself, someone exciting and special, but it wasn't real. By the time she might have realized that, she was already caught in his plans." Ethan considered this, then asked with heartbreaking directness, "Did Mom stop loving me? Is that why she was okay with changing my name?" "No," Jack said firmly, pulling Ethan into a hug. "Mom loves you very much. She made terrible mistakes, but never doubt that she loves you. This situation is about the bad choices adults made, not about you." That night, after Ethan was asleep, Jack received an encrypted email from Mike containing security footage from the hospital where Melissa was being treated. The video showed a hospital orderly delivering something to Melissa's room, then leaving without interacting with her. Unusual protocol for a suicide watch patient. Facial recognition matched the orderly to a known associate of Blackwood, Mike's message noted. "Blackwood may be in custody, but his network is active. Watch your back." Jack forwarded the footage to Davis, who promised to increase Melissa's security and investigate the orderly. Whatever had been delivered, a message, a threat, or something more sinister, it confirmed Jack's suspicion that Blackwood's organization remained operational despite his arrest. The next morning, Rebecca called with disturbing news. Melissa's attorney had filed an emergency motion claiming Jack had a history of controlling behavior and paranoid tendencies that made him an unfit parent. The filing included affidavits from friends Jack had never heard of, describing incidents of aggression and instability that had supposedly occurred over the past year. "It's all fabricated," Jack said flatly after Rebecca read portions of the allegations. "Obviously," she agreed. but it's a strategic move to muddy the waters. If they can cast doubt on your stability, they create leverage for Melissa's eventual custody petition. This has Blackwood's network written all over it, trying to regain control of Ethan through legal means since the illegal attempt failed. How do we fight it? Aggressively, Rebecca replied. I'm filing countermotions documenting Melissa's actual behavior, including the false passport scheme. We'll request psychological evaluations for both parents, which will expose these fabrications. But Jack, her voice turned cautionary. This suggests they haven't given up on whatever plan involved Ethan. Stay vigilant. The warning proved prescient. That afternoon, while picking up Ethan from school, Jack noticed an unfamiliar woman watching the playground. When he approached, she quickly left in a luxury SUV with diplomatic plates. That night, the security system detected motion in their backyard at 2:17 a.m. Jack reviewed the footage to see a figure in dark clothing examining windows and doors before retreating when exterior lights activated. Local police responded but found no suspect. These incidents began a pattern of escalating pressure. Melissa's condition improved, and she was returned to detention. But her legal offensive continued with new filings painting Jack as dangerous and herself as a victim of both Blackwood's manipulation and Jack's alleged controlling behavior. Meanwhile, Blackwood maintained his innocence from federal detention, his expensive legal team filing motion after motion challenging evidence and procedural matters. Despite being denied bail, he appeared confident during court appearances, even nodding respectfully to Jack in the gallery, a gesture that felt more like a threat than acknowledgement. 3 weeks after the airport incident, the pressure culminated in a direct attack. While driving Ethan to a therapy appointment, Jack noticed they were being followed by a black sedan. Implementing evasive driving techniques from his military training, he called Davis while navigating complex traffic patterns to confirm the tale. At an intersection, the sedan accelerated suddenly, attempting to T-bone Jack's vehicle. Jack's reflexes allowed him to avoid the worst of the impact, but the collision still sent his car spinning across lanes. Before Jack could recover, 2 men emerged from the sedan, approaching with clear purpose. Jack reacted instantly, instructing Ethan to unbuckle and lie flat on the floor. As the first man reached the driver's side, Jack exploded into action, using his door as a weapon to knock the attacker back, then engaging the second man with precise strikes that neutralized the threat without lethal force. Police arrived minutes later to find Jack standing protectively over Ethan, both men secured with zip ties. Jack kept in his vehicle for emergencies. The attackers refused to speak, carrying no identification, but their vehicle registration led to a shell company connected to Blackwood International. The attack transformed the narrative. Media coverage shifted from salacious speculation about Melissa's involvement with Blackwood to the ongoing danger facing Jack and Ethan. Security footage of Jack's defensive actions was praised for his restraint and skill in protecting his son. Melissa's attorney withdrew the emergency custody motion the following day, unable to maintain the fiction of Jack as unstable in the face of such clear evidence of legitimate threats. However, this retreat seemed strategic rather than defeated, a tactical pause rather than surrender. The real breakthrough came 3 days later when Davis arrived at Jack's home with news that would fundamentally alter the case. "We've turned one of Blackwood's associates," he announced once Ethan was occupied in another room. In exchange for reduced charges, he's provided details about the Veracruz project and Melissa's role. Jack steeled himself. "Tell me." "It's a network for wealthy individuals seeking to disappear with children, custody disputes, flight from prosecution, tax evasion. Blackwood provided new identities, properties in non-extradition countries, and ongoing security. The clients contributed either substantial funds or valuable skills to the network." "And Melissa?" Davis hesitated before continuing. "According to our informant, she approached Blackwood initially, not the reverse. She met him at a museum function last year and became interested in his international lifestyle. When she learned about his other operations, she apparently saw an opportunity." The revelation hit Jack like a physical blow. "She initiated this?" "The evidence suggests so. Emails recovered from Blackwood's encrypted server show her describing you as controllable leverage due to your cybersecurity expertise and government contracts. She referred to Ethan as necessary collateral to ensure your cooperation once they were safely established in Mexico. Jack struggled to reconcile this information with the woman he'd married, the mother who had once seemed so devoted to their son. What was the ultimate goal? Blackwood's operation needed cutting-edge security to protect their communications and financial transactions. Your expertise was the real target. They planned to use Ethan to force your cooperation once they were beyond U.S. jurisdiction. The pieces finally aligned into a coherent but horrifying picture. Melissa hadn't been manipulated by Blackwood. She had been an active participant in a scheme to use their son as leverage against Jack. The realization hardened something in Jack's core, transforming lingering confusion into cold, focused resolve. "What does this mean for the case?" he asked. "Melissa's victim narrative is finished," Davis replied. "The prosecutor is upgrading her charges based on this new evidence. As for Blackwood, we're using this breakthrough to unravel his entire network." As Davis left, Jack found himself facing a new reality. The threat to Ethan wasn't over. If anything, it had expanded beyond Blackwood and Melissa to include their entire operation. Individuals with resources and desperation might still see Ethan as a path to Jack's expertise, especially if Blackwood had shared that strategy with associates. That night, after checking security systems and looking in on his sleeping son, Jack began formulating a counterstrike, a plan to not just defend against future threats, but to eliminate them permanently. The military strategist in him recognized that remaining passive would only invite further attacks. It was time to take the fight to those who threatened his family, using every skill and resource at his disposal. Whatever came next, Jack would ensure that those who had tried to use his son as a pawn would regret their miscalculation. Chapter 5. Shifting Strategies. The federal prosecutor assigned to Melissa's case, Alexandra Diaz, didn't mince words during their meeting at her downtown office. "With the new evidence, we're looking at significant prison time for your wife. The cooperating witness has provided documentation of her involvement dating back 14 months, well before she met Blackwood." Jack processed this information with growing disbelief. She was involved with human trafficking before Blackwood? Not directly, Diaz clarified. She was connected to a network that specialized in helping wealthy individuals disappear with children in custody disputes. High-end identity laundering, essentially. Blackwood's operation absorbed this smaller network last year, which is how they connected. The timeline aligned with changes Jack had noticed in Melissa's behavior: increased secrecy, unexplained absences, sudden interest in international travel. What he'd attributed to a potential affair had been something far more calculated. According to financial records, Diaz continued, Melissa received substantial payments through offshore accounts, labeled as art consultation fees. Our forensic accountants traced movements of over $300,000 in the past year. Jack's jaw tightened. While he'd been working to support their family, Melissa had been building a secret financial cushion for her eventual escape, or payment for services rendered to Blackwood's organization. "How does my son figure into this?" Jack asked, focusing on his primary concern. Diaz's expression softened slightly. "The evidence suggests Melissa initially planned to leave without Ethan. Early communications with the network focused solely on her own disappearance. Approximately 8 months ago, the strategy shifted when Blackwood identified your cybersecurity expertise as valuable. Ethan became the leverage point. The revelation that Melissa had considered abandoning their son entirely before deciding to use him as a tool against Jack left him momentarily speechless. "I understand this is difficult to process," Diaz acknowledged. "But I need you to understand the seriousness of what we're facing. Blackwood's network remains active despite his detention. Multiple children are currently missing, presumed to have been relocated through this operation. Your son was targeted specifically, and that targeting may continue. What are you suggesting?" "Witness protection," Diaz stated plainly. "For both you and Ethan. New identities, relocation, the full program. At least until we've dismantled the entire operation." Jack had considered this possibility, but dismissed it as extreme. Now, with evidence of a coordinated network still actively targeting them, the option required serious consideration. "I need time to think about it," he replied. "Uprooting Ethan after everything he's been through." "Of course," Diaz nodded. "But don't take too long. The threats against you two are escalating. The attack on your vehicle wasn't random. It was a coordinated attempt to acquire Ethan. After leaving the prosecutor's office, Jack drove to meet Mike at a secure location they'd established for sensitive discussions. The weathered veteran listened intently as Jack relayed the new information, his expression darkening with each revelation. Witness protection might be your best option, Mike conceded reluctantly. These people have resources and reach. If they want Ethan badly enough. I can't just disappear, Jack objected. My company, our clients, everything I've built. Mike leaned forward, his expression grave. Jack, listen to yourself. You're weighing your business against your son's safety. The rebuke landed hard, forcing Jack to confront his resistance. Was he truly concerned about Ethan's adjustment, or was pride clouding his judgment? The thought of running, of surrendering the life he'd built, struck at the core of his identity as a protector. There might be another approach, Jack said finally. One that doesn't require us to spend our lives looking over our shoulders. I know that tone, Mike replied warily. What are you thinking? A counteroffensive. We identify the key players in Blackwood's network and neutralize their capability to threaten us. Mike's eyebrows rose. You're talking about taking down an international criminal organization. That's federal territory, not something two former military guys should tackle, no matter how skilled. I'm not suggesting we do it alone, Jack clarified. But we have resources the feds don't, cybersecurity expertise, private intelligence channels, contacts who operate in gray areas. And what does Davis think about this alternative approach? Jack's silence answered the question. You haven't told him, Mike realized. Jack, that's dangerous territory. Interfering with a federal investigation. Not interfering, Jack corrected. Supplementing. Accelerating. The feds move, building airtight cases over months or years. Meanwhile, Ethan remains a target. I need this threat eliminated now, not eventually. After further discussion, they reached a compromise. Jack would agree to enhanced security measures for Ethan, including temporary relocation to a secure property Mike owned in rural New Hampshire, while they gathered intelligence on Blackwood's operation through legal channels. They would share any significant findings with Davis's team, maintaining plausible deniability while accelerating the federal investigation. The next challenge was explaining the situation to Ethan. That evening, after dinner at their home, which now featured round-the-clock security courtesy of Mike's private security firm, Jack sat down with his son for a difficult conversation. Remember how we talked about taking a break from school? Jack began carefully, spending some time in a different place until things settled down. Ethan nodded solemnly. Because of the bad men who tried to hurt us in the car? Exactly. Well, Uncle Mike has a cool cabin in the mountains. It has a lake for fishing, trails for hiking, and even a tree house he built for his nephew. We're going to stay there for a little while. What about school? Ethan asked, ever the conscientious student. Mrs. Cooper is arranging for your assignments, and I'll help you with them. Think of it as a special learning adventure. Ethan considered this, then asked the question Jack had been dreading. Is this because of Mom? Is she trying to take me away again? Jack chose his words with extreme care. Mom is dealing with legal problems right now. She made some bad choices that have consequences. Our trip isn't directly because of her, but because of the people she was working with. They're still trying to finish what they started, which was taking me away from you. Ethan concluded with heartbreaking clarity. Yes, but I won't let that happen. Ever. The next morning, they departed for New Hampshire with a security detail ensuring they weren't followed. The cabin proved to be a well-equipped retreat featuring modern security systems disguised within its rustic appearance. Solar panels, satellite internet, and a generator provided self-sufficiency, while multiple escape routes and hidden compartments for emergency supplies spoke to Mike's paranoid attention to detail. Once Ethan was settled, exploring the treehouse under the watchful eye of a security operative posing as Mike's groundskeeper, Jack and Mike established their intelligence operation in the cabin's converted basement. Using Sentinel's resources remotely, they began mapping Blackwood's network through financial transactions, property records, and communications metadata. This is bigger than I expected, Mike commented on their third day, reviewing a digital map of connections they'd established. Blackwood's operation spans at least 12 countries, with significant assets in Belize, Panama, and the United Arab Emirates. Jack nodded grimly. And look at the portfolio of properties for relocated clients, private compounds, island retreats, remote estates, all purchased through layers of shell companies, all staffed by network personnel. It's a parallel world for people who want to disappear. The question is who's running things with Blackwood in custody, Mike pointed out. These operations don't manage themselves. Jack focused on a particular node in their relationship map, a Swiss financial advisor named Victor Stein, who had processed transactions for multiple entities connected to Blackwood. This guy keeps appearing as a common factor, Jack noted. Let's dig deeper here. As they continued their investigation, Jack maintained daily contact with Davis, sharing selected information while presenting it as coming from Sentinel's legitimate business intelligence sources. The federal investigation progressed, with additional arrests of lower-level operatives, but the core of Blackwood's organization remained intact and operational. On day 5 at the cabin, Jack received an encrypted message from an anonymous source. The boy remains valuable. The game has changed, not ended. Assets are being reallocated. Decision deadline, 72 hours. Jack immediately forwarded the message to Davis, who confirmed its likely authenticity based on linguistic analysis matching known communications from Blackwood's organization. They're regrouping, Davis concluded during their secure call, adapting to Blackwood's absence. The reference to a deadline suggests they're planning something specific. We need to move Ethan again, Jack decided. Different location, higher security. Actually, Davis countered, this might be an opportunity. If they make contact with specific demands, we could use that to identify and target the new leadership. The strategic logic was sound, but Jack bristled at the suggestion of using Ethan as bait, even with extensive protection. Not an option. My son isn't a tactical resource. Davis backed down, but the conversation left Jack unsettled. The federal approach prioritized dismantling the entire network over the immediate safety of individual targets, a logical but coldly utilitarian calculation that Jack couldn't accept when it came to Ethan. Later that day, their research into Victor Stein yielded a breakthrough. Facial recognition software matched him to surveillance footage from Boston Logan International Airport. He had arrived 3 days earlier and checked into the Four Seasons Hotel downtown. He's here, Jack realized. The new leadership is making a direct move. Mike studied the hotel's security layout on his tablet. The Four Seasons has excellent security. Private elevators to the luxury suites, discreet staff. Perfect for someone who wants privacy while conducting sensitive business. Or for someone planning an operation to acquire a high-value target, Jack added grimly. They debated their next move, weighing the risks of different approaches. Direct surveillance of Stein might alert him to their awareness. Informing Davis would likely trigger a federal response that could drive Stein underground before they identified his local contacts. Doing nothing while a key figure in Blackwood's organization operated in proximity to Ethan was unacceptable. Jack finally proposed a calculated risk. We use Sentinel's legitimacy as cover. I approached Stein as a cybersecurity consultant who's been contracted to upgrade systems for one of his client companies. It gives me access without arousing suspicion. Extremely dangerous, Mike objected. If he recognizes you from Blackwood's intelligence on your family, I'll use a professional alias I've established for sensitive client work. Different appearance, credentials that will withstand scrutiny. I've used this identity for government contracts where my military background might raise questions. The plan took shape over the next several hours. Jack would approach Stein as Thomas Barrett, a cybersecurity specialist with particular expertise in financial privacy solutions. The meeting request would come through legitimate channels via one of Sentinel's banking clients who had connections to Stein's firm. Mike would maintain overwatch, while their most trusted operatives ensured Ethan's security at the cabin. 2 days later, Jack sat in the Four Seasons lounge, transformed into Thomas Barrett with subtle but effective changes, gray-streaked hair, designer glasses, a precisely trimmed beard, and the conservative attire of a high-end financial services consultant. When Victor Stein arrived, Jack recognized him immediately from their intelligence photos, mid-50s, immaculately dressed, with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to power. The initial conversation adhered to their cover story, with Jack demonstrating genuine expertise in financial cybersecurity that earned Stein's professional respect. As they moved from technical discussions to broader security philosophy over drinks, Jack carefully navigated toward more sensitive territory. The real challenge isn't technical, he remarked casually. It's human. People leave digital breadcrumbs no matter how careful they are. Stein nodded, sipping his whiskey. Hence the premium on personal discretion in my line of work. High net worth individuals value privacy above all else, especially when relocating assets across jurisdictions, Jack suggested, watching Stein's reaction closely. A flicker of interest crossed the Swiss financier's features. You have experience in that area, Mr. Barrett? Let's say I understand the requirements of clients who need to establish new identities and secure locations when circumstances demand it. Technical security is only one component of a comprehensive disappearance. Stein studied him with new appreciation. You speak of such matters with unusual directness. Jack maintained his professional demeanor while taking a calculated risk. In my experience, the right clients appreciate efficiency over euphemism, particularly when time-sensitive situations arise. Indeed. Stein set down his glass. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. My suite has a rather impressive view of the harbor. In the elevator to Stein's suite, Jack activated the discreet recording device concealed in his watch, a violation of his agreement with Davis, but necessary insurance. The suite proved to be a lavish space occupying half the hotel's top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. An associate recently encountered legal complications, Stein remarked as he poured fresh drinks, creating certain operational challenges that require immediate solutions. I heard about Blackwood's situation, Jack replied, accepting the drink but not consuming it. Unfortunate timing, given the Harrington acquisition was nearly complete. The deliberate reference to his own family as an acquisition was a gamble designed to confirm Stein's knowledge and involvement. The financier's response was immediate and revealing. You're remarkably well-informed, Mr. Barrett. The Harrington situation remains a priority despite complications. The child's value as leverage remains significant. Jack maintained his professional mask while internally processing the cold calculation in Stein's statement. Current security around the boy presents challenges, I imagine. Temporary obstacles, Stein waved dismissively. Alternative acquisition methods are being implemented. In fact, certain medical interventions may simplify the extraction considerably. The euphemistic reference to drugging or harming Ethan to facilitate kidnapping tested the limits of Jack's self-control. Timeline. Imminent. Assets are already positioned. The father's cybersecurity expertise remains the primary objective, with the child as the access key. Stein studied Jack with growing curiosity. Your interest seems more than professional, Mr. Barrett. Jack recognized the shift in Stein's demeanor, suspicion replacing cautious openness. He needed to extract himself before the situation deteriorated. Professional opportunity, Jack explained smoothly. If Blackwood's organization requires enhanced security during this transition, my firm has relevant experience and discretion. Stein's expression remained skeptical. Perhaps, though I find myself wondering how you came to know specific details about the Harrington situation. That information was compartmentalized even within our organization. The conversation had reached a dangerous tipping point. Jack prepared to implement his emergency exit strategy when Stein's phone chimed with an incoming message. The financier checked the screen, his expression transforming from suspicion to alarm. Interesting timing, Stein remarked coldly. Federal agents have just entered the hotel lobby, accompanied by hotel security. Rather coincidental, wouldn't you say, Mr. Barrett? Or should I address you differently? Jack abandoned pretense, rising smoothly to his feet. You should consider your options carefully, Victor. Those agents have enough evidence to detain you for questioning regarding financial crimes. What they don't yet have is confirmation of your role in human trafficking and attempted kidnapping. Stein's hand moved toward his jacket, but Jack was faster, closing the distance between them with military efficiency. He pinned the financier against the wall, voice dropping to a dangerous register. That recording device in your jacket pocket won't help you. But the one I'm wearing has captured everything you've said about acquiring my son. Yes, Victor, you've been talking to Jack Harrington, not Thomas Barrett. Color drained from Stein's face as recognition and understanding dawned. Before he could respond, Jack continued, his tone eerily calm despite the barely contained fury beneath. You have exactly one chance to survive this encounter. Tell me who's positioned to take my son, where they are, and when they plan to move. Do it now, and I ensure the federal agents get only financial evidence. Withhold anything, and I guarantee your involvement in child trafficking becomes the focus of their investigation. Survival instinct overcame loyalty to the organization. Stein detailed an operation plan for the following day. A team of 4 operatives prepared to use sedatives disguised as insect repellent to incapacitate Ethan's security detail before extracting him from the cabin. The team leader is Martin Keller, Stein explained rapidly. Former military contractor. He's established surveillance points around the property perimeter. They plan to move at dawn. Jack committed the details to memory, then released Stein with a warning. When those federal agents question you, remember our arrangement. Financial crimes only. Nothing about Ethan or kidnapping operations. If you honor that, I honor my end. If not, he left the threat implied but unmistakable. Minutes later, Jack slipped out through the service entrance as federal agents reached Stein's floor. The operation had been a calculated risk that yielded critical intelligence. The immediate threat to Ethan was now identified and could be neutralized. However, Jack's unilateral action had potentially compromised the federal investigation, a complication he would need to address with Davis. He contacted Mike immediately, relaying Stein's information about the planned extraction operation. Change of plans. We're not waiting for them to come to us. Tonight, we hunt. The statement reflected a fundamental shift in Jack's approach. No longer content with defensive measures and reactive security, he had decided to eliminate threats to his son at their source. The transformation from protective father to proactive hunter had been completed in that hotel suite, triggered by Stein's casual discussion of harming Ethan. As night fell over the New Hampshire forests surrounding the cabin, Jack and Mike prepared for a confrontation that would decisively demonstrate the consequences of targeting Jack Harrington's son. The hunters were about to become the hunted. Chapter 6. Turning the Tables. Darkness shrouded the dense forest surrounding Mike's cabin as Jack and 2 trusted operators from Mike's security team moved silently through the underbrush. Each man carried non-lethal tactical equipment. Jack's insistence, despite the severity of the threat. This wasn't about killing Blackwood's operatives, but capturing them for intelligence and demonstrating the consequences of targeting his family. Through thermal imaging goggles, Jack identified the first surveillance position Stein had described, a camouflaged blind approximately 200 yards from the cabin's perimeter. Within it, a single figure monitored the property with high-powered optics. Jack signaled to his companions, who circled to establish containment positions. Using hand signals from their military days, they coordinated a simultaneous approach that left no escape route uncovered. Jack advanced directly, moving in silence his intelligence training had perfected. 10 feet from the blind, a twig snapped beneath his boot. A rookie mistake born from urgency. The observer reacted instantly, swinging a compact weapon toward the sound. Jack launched forward, closing the remaining distance in a controlled tackle that drove both men to the forest floor. After a brief, intense struggle, Jack subdued the man with a chokehold that rendered him unconscious without permanent damage. Target 1 secured, Jack reported via his throat microphone. Moving to extract intelligence. A search of the observer, whom Jack recognized from Stein's description as Martin Keller, yielded communications equipment, tactical plans, and most disturbingly, a case containing syringes of powerful sedatives labeled with Ethan's name and weight. The discovery crystallized Jack's resolve. This wasn't merely a kidnapping attempt, but a meticulously planned extraction that prioritized operational success over Ethan's safety. The dosage would be dangerous for a child of Ethan's size. These people were willing to risk his life to acquire him. After securing Keller with zip ties, Jack administered a mild stimulant to revive him for questioning. The man regained consciousness with professional composure, assessing his situation before speaking. "You're making a mistake," Keller stated calmly. "This operation has contingencies you can't anticipate." Jack displayed the case of sedatives. "Intended for my 8-year-old son. Calculated to render him unconscious for approximately 6 hours during transport. Potentially lethal if the dosage estimation is even slightly off." Keller maintained his detached demeanor. "Standard extraction protocol for high-value targets. Nothing personal." "That's where you're wrong," Jack replied, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. "This is entirely personal to me." The interrogation proceeded with cold efficiency, Jack employing psychological techniques rather than physical coercion. He revealed his knowledge of Blackwood's operation, of Stein's arrest, of the network's planned restructuring. Each piece of intelligence demonstrated to Keller that his position was more precarious than he'd realized. "Your organization is collapsing," Jack informed him. "Blackwood is cooperating with federal authorities to reduce his sentence. Stein is doing the same. The client list has been compromised. You're operating without support or extraction protocols." This last statement, a calculated exaggeration, produced the first crack in Keller's professional facade. Stein wouldn't compromise the network, he objected. He has too much invested. "People prioritize self-preservation," Jack countered, "especially when facing federal trafficking charges. Stein traded information for consideration, including details about your team, your methods, and your target timeline." Jack continued dismantling Keller's resistance through strategic information revelation, carefully balancing truth with calculated deception. The approach yielded results within 20 minutes. Keller provided the locations of his 3 team members, their extraction route, and most importantly, confirmation of the broader operational objective. "The kid's not the primary target," Keller finally admitted. "He's leveraged to secure the father's cooperation. Harrington's cybersecurity expertise is the actual objective, specifically his access to government contractor systems." This confirmation aligned with Davis's suspicions about the true motivation behind targeting Jack's family. Blackwood's organization sought not just a cybersecurity expert, but specifically someone with Jack's unique combination of technical skills and security clearances. After securing the information they needed, Mike's team transported the subdued Keller to a secure holding location while Jack and the remaining operators moved to neutralize the other team members. Each extraction followed a similar pattern: silent approach, non-lethal takedown, and controlled questioning. By dawn, all 4 members of Blackwood's extraction team had been captured without alerting federal authorities. This deliberate omission represented a calculated risk on Jack's part. If Davis learned of the operation, protocol would require him to take custody of the suspects immediately, potentially before Jack extracted crucial intelligence about remaining threats to Ethan. At the secure holding facility, a converted hunting lodge owned through multiple shell companies connected to Mike's security firm, Jack conducted comprehensive interrogations of all 4 operatives. The picture that emerged confirmed his worst fears. Blackwood's organization remained operational despite key leadership arrests, with a specific focus on acquiring Jack's expertise through leveraging Ethan. "Who's coordinating now that Blackwood and Stein are in custody?" Jack demanded of Keller, who had emerged as the most forthcoming of the captives. "Compartmentalized structure," Keller explained. "Regional directors operate independently but receive strategic guidance from the board. Names: I deal with handlers, not directors. That's intentional. Operational security through information limitation." Jack pressed further, employing psychological pressure points identified during earlier questioning. "Your handler. Who connects you to leadership?" Keller hesitated, weighing self-preservation against organizational loyalty. "Christine Winters, financial attaché at the Swiss consulate in Boston. Diplomatic cover for operational coordination." The name triggered immediate recognition. Christine Winters had been mentioned in Melissa's phone records multiple times in the months before the airport incident. The connection suggested Melissa's involvement with Blackwood's organization might have been more significant than previously understood. After concluding the interrogations, Jack faced a difficult decision regarding the captured operatives. Turning them over to federal authorities would provide evidence against Blackwood's organization, but would also alert the network to the compromise of their extraction team, potentially accelerating contingency plans against Ethan. Mike advocated for a third option: "We've extracted the intelligence we need. Now we send a message back through their own channels." The approach was unorthodox, but strategically sound. They would release Keller with explicit photographic evidence of his capture, along with a clear warning. Any further attempts to target Ethan Harrington would result in immediate, permanent consequences for those involved. "It's a calculated risk," Mike acknowledged. "But these organizations operate on cost-benefit analysis. If the cost becomes too high, they'll redirect resources to easier targets." Jack considered the approach, balancing ethical considerations against Ethan's safety. "They need to understand that targeting my son transforms this from a security matter to a personal vendetta they cannot win." The message was crafted, neither melodramatic nor explicitly threatening, but leaving no doubt about Jack's capability and resolve. Keller was released at a remote location with instructions to deliver this message to his handler, along with USB drives containing selected portions of his recorded confession. With the immediate threat neutralized, Jack returned to the cabin to find Ethan safe, but restless after a night confined indoors. Jack maintained a casual demeanor while processing the gravity of what had nearly occurred, how close these operatives had come to taking his son. "Can we go fishing today?" Ethan asked over breakfast, unaware of the night's events. Uncle Mike said the lake has huge bass. Jack forced a smile, determined to maintain normalcy despite his heightened vigilance. "Absolutely. But we stick together, okay? No wandering off." As they fished from the dock that morning, Jack received a secure message from Davis. Winter arrested at consulate. Diplomatic immunity challenged. Network disruption accelerating. Call immediately. The timing suggested federal authorities had moved against Christine Winters independent of Jack's operation against the extraction team. He excused himself briefly, moving just far enough from Ethan to speak privately while maintaining visual contact. "What prompted the arrest?" Jack asked when Davis answered. "Financial evidence from Stein's devices," Davis replied. "Plus a witness who came forward yesterday, one of Melissa's colleagues from the museum. Apparently, Winters recruited your wife into Blackwood's organization through art acquisition channels. And the diplomatic immunity challenge. Evidence of activities outside official consular functions. The State Department is supporting our position. This is a significant disruption to their command structure, Jack. Combined with Blackwood and Stein's arrests, we've effectively decapitated their North American operation." Jack debated whether to reveal his knowledge of the planned extraction operation. Ultimately, deciding transparency served his long-term objective of ensuring Ethan's safety. "They sent a team after Ethan last night," he informed Davis, "for operatives with sedatives and extraction plans. We intercepted them." A long silence followed before Davis responded with controlled frustration. "Define intercepted. And why am I just hearing about this now?" "Neutralized without casualties. Questioned regarding network structure. Released with a message regarding consequences of further targeting." "Damn it, Jack," Davis exploded. "You conducted an unsanctioned counterintelligence operation without notifying federal authorities? Do you realize how many laws?" "I realize my son was hours away from being drugged and transported out of the country," Jack interrupted coldly. Operational security necessitated immediate action without communication delays. The tension in their conversation reflected fundamental differences in approach. Davis bound by legal procedures and jurisdictional protocols. Jack governed solely by what would most effectively protect Ethan. "We need to debrief immediately," Davis insisted. "And I want access to any intelligence you gathered from these operatives." "Agreed," Jack conceded. "But Ethan's security remains my priority. I'll come to you when he's secured in a different location." After ending the call, Jack returned to Ethan at the dock, where his son had managed to catch a respectable smallmouth bass. For the moment, Jack allowed himself to enjoy his son's excitement, preserving this pocket of normalcy amidst their disrupted lives. Later that day, as Ethan napped following their fishing excursion, Jack received another secure message, this one from an anonymous source within Blackwood's organization. Message received. Asset acquisition operation terminated. Resource allocation redirected. Harrington file classified inactive pending leadership restructuring. The clinical language confirmed what Jack had hoped. His countermeasures had succeeded in categorizing Ethan as too costly a target. The organization's cost-benefit analysis now classified the Harrington operation as excessively risky relative to potential gain. That evening, Jack briefed Mike on these developments while they prepared dinner for Ethan. "It's a start," Mike acknowledged. "But organizations like Blackwood's adapt and evolve. Today's inactive classification could change with new leadership or shifting priorities. Which is why we maintain pressure." Jack agreed. Keller's information about regional directors gives federal authorities multiple new targets. Davis's team is already moving on the financial infrastructure Stein managed. "And Melissa?" Mike asked quietly. "Her trial date's been set. The prosecutor is seeking maximum sentences on all charges." Jack's expression hardened at the mention of his wife. The evidence of her willing participation in the scheme to use Ethan as leverage against him had eliminated any remnant of sympathy. She made her choice, he stated flatly. Now she faces the consequences. Later that night, after putting Ethan to bed with reassurances that they'd return home soon, Jack received a call from Rebecca Walsh with unexpected news. Melissa was offering a comprehensive plea deal. In exchange for testimony against Blackwood's entire organization, including previously unknown leadership figures, she sought a reduced sentence with potential for supervised release after 5 years. The prosecutor wants your input, Rebecca explained. As the victim's father and her spouse, your perspective carries weight. Jack considered the implications carefully. Melissa's testimony could accelerate the dismantling of Blackwood's network, potentially eliminating threats to Ethan more thoroughly than even his own countermeasures. However, the prospect of her potential release in 5 years raised concerns about Ethan's long-term security. What protections would be in place regarding Ethan? He asked. Permanent termination of all parental rights, Rebecca replied. No contact until Ethan reaches adulthood, and then only with his explicit consent. Any violation immediately returns her to custody to serve the remainder of the maximum sentence. Jack weighed the proposal against alternatives. If Melissa's case went to trial, her attorneys would likely construct a narrative portraying her as another victim of Blackwood's manipulation. Given public sympathy for mothers and the complexity of the case, there remained a small but real possibility she might receive an even more lenient sentence than the plea offer. I'll support the plea agreement on one condition, Jack decided. Full recorded confession acknowledging her willing participation and her understanding that she was risking Ethan's life. I want no ambiguity for when Ethan eventually asks questions about what happened. The following day, Jack met with Davis to provide a complete briefing on the extraction team's capture and interrogation. While the commander expressed frustration at Jack's unilateral action, the intelligence gathered proved valuable enough to mitigate official consequences. We've identified 3 additional regional directors based on your information, Davis confirmed. Arrest operations are being coordinated with international partners. The network is destabilizing rapidly. And Christine Winters? Singing like a professional soprano. Between her information and what you extracted from Keller, we've mapped approximately 70% of their North American infrastructure. This progress, combined with Melissa's plea agreement, suggested the immediate threat to Ethan was substantially diminished. While Jack remained cautious about declaring total victory, the strategic landscape had shifted dramatically in their favor. After concluding his meeting with Davis, Jack returned to the cabin to prepare Ethan for their return home. The boy had adapted remarkably well to their temporary relocation, but clearly missed his friends, school, and familiar surroundings. Are the bad people gone? Ethan asked as they packed his belongings. The ones who were trying to take you are, Jack confirmed, maintaining his policy of age-appropriate honesty. And the police have arrested many others who were working with them, including Mom? Ethan's direct question reflected his growing understanding of the situation despite Jack's efforts to shield him from the harshest realities. Yes, including Mom. She made some very bad choices that hurt our family. Ethan nodded solemnly, processing this confirmation of what he had likely already intuited. Will I ever see her again? Jack chose his words with extreme care. That will be your decision when you're older. For now, we focus on building our life together and healing from what happened. The next morning, they departed for home with reduced, but still substantial security measures in place. As they drove through the New Hampshire countryside toward Massachusetts, Jack reflected on the events of the past weeks. The threat had been neutralized through a combination of federal action and his own more direct countermeasures. Melissa had chosen a path that prioritized her own desires over her son's welfare and would face appropriate consequences. Most importantly, Ethan remained safe, not through running or hiding, but through directly confronting and eliminating the threats against him. Jack had demonstrated that targeting his son transformed him from a cybersecurity consultant into something far more dangerous. A father with the skills, resources, and determination to dismantle anyone who threatened his child. The battle had been won, but Jack harbored no illusions about the war being over. Blackwood's organization, while severely damaged, operated globally with deep resources. New leadership would eventually emerge, new priorities would be established, Jack would need to maintain vigilance while simultaneously providing Ethan with as normal a childhood as possible. As they crossed the state line back into Massachusetts, Ethan slept peacefully in the back seat, unaware of the lengths his father had gone to ensure his safety. Jack glanced in the rearview mirror at his son's peaceful face and made a silent promise. Whatever came next, whatever threats emerged in the future, Jack would continue to protect Ethan, through legal channels when possible, through more direct methods when necessary. Some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. Jack had discovered his absolute limit, the point at which his moral constraints yielded to primal protective instinct. Those who had tested that limit had learned a painful lesson. When it came to his son's safety, Jack Harrington acknowledged no boundaries, respected no rules, and forgave no transgressions. Chapter 7. New Foundations. 3 months after returning home, Jack stood in the kitchen preparing breakfast as Ethan gathered his school materials. The morning routine had achieved a new normal. Security protocols integrated seamlessly with everyday activities, vigilance balanced with deliberate efforts to maintain a childhood untainted by fear. "Dad, can Tommy come over after school?" Ethan asked, stuffing books into his backpack. "We need to finish our science project." Jack smiled at this evidence of his son's social life rebuilding. "Absolutely. I'll pick you both up at 3. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of Mrs. Cooper, who had offered to drive Ethan to school during the transition period. Jack had initially hesitated to accept help, but Dr. Benson had emphasized the importance of trusted community support in Ethan's recovery. "Good morning." Linda Cooper greeted them warmly. "Ready for the big math test, Ethan?" "I practiced decimals all weekend," Ethan confirmed proudly. Dad made flashcards. Jack handed Ethan his lunch bag, exchanging their morning fist bump ritual before his son departed with his teacher. Through the security monitors, Jack watched them enter Mrs. Cooper's car, noting the unmarked security vehicle that would discreetly follow them to school, one of several ongoing precautions maintained despite the diminished threat level. His phone vibrated with an incoming message from Davis. "Melissa's formal sentencing today. Media interest high. Security protocols enhanced at courthouse." Jack had deliberately chosen not to attend the sentencing, despite the prosecutor's suggestion that his presence might reinforce the seriousness of Melissa's crimes. He had provided a written victim impact statement focused on Ethan's trauma rather than his own sense of betrayal, prioritizing the legal outcome over emotional catharsis. The plea agreement had proceeded as negotiated, with Melissa providing extensive testimony against Blackwood's organization in exchange for the reduced sentence. The details revealed during those proceedings had shocked even Jack, who thought he understood the scope of her involvement. She had been actively recruiting other museum professionals into the network for over a year, identifying potential targets for Blackwood's operation through her connections in the art world. Most disturbing had been her recorded confession regarding Ethan, made as part of Jack's conditional support for the plea deal. "I knew using Ethan as leverage against Jack carried risks to his physical and emotional well-being. I chose to accept those risks because the financial compensation and lifestyle Blackwood offered seemed worth it at the time. I recognize now the selfishness and moral failure this represents." The clinical acknowledgement, devoid of genuine remorse, had confirmed Jack's decision to sever all possibilities of reconciliation. The woman he had married, the mother of his child, had transformed into someone unrecognizable, or perhaps had always been that person beneath a carefully maintained facade. After Ethan left for school, Jack connected remotely to Sentinel's systems, reviewing client security protocols while monitoring news outlets for coverage of Melissa's sentencing. The company had weathered the publicity storm surprisingly well, Mike stepping into leadership roles during Jack's absence to maintain client relationships and operational continuity. By mid-morning, headlines confirmed the expected outcome: museum curator sentenced in international trafficking conspiracy. The 7-year sentence with possibility of supervised release after 5 years reflected the plea agreement terms, though media coverage emphasized her cooperation in bringing down a global criminal enterprise, rather than her willing participation in actions that endangered her own child. Jack closed the news tabs without reading further. The legal resolution, while necessary, represented just one component of their ongoing recovery. Rebuilding Ethan's sense of security and trust remained the greater challenge. one that required daily attention and consistent emotional support. His phone rang with a private number that few people possessed. "Harrington," he answered. "It's Davis. Thought you'd want to know the sentencing went as expected. No complications." "Appreciated," Jack acknowledged. "Any updates on the international components?" "Interpol operations ongoing in 6 countries. Blackwood's infrastructure is collapsing faster than anticipated with the financial intelligence Stein and Winters provided. Their client list, wealthy individuals who use the network to disappear with children, is proving particularly valuable for resolving international custody disputes. And Blackwood himself? Cooperating minimally. His attorneys are still negotiating terms, but without leverage, his position weakens daily. Current projection is 30 years minimum." After concluding the call, Jack received a notification from Ethan's school, a scheduled parent-teacher conference reminder. These mundane aspects of fatherhood had acquired new significance after nearly losing them. Jack confirmed his attendance, recognizing that maintaining Ethan's academic progress and social development represented another front in their recovery. Later that afternoon, Jack arrived at the school to collect Ethan and his friend Tommy for their science project work. The security team had already conducted a perimeter check, establishing the routine safety protocols that had become standard for any of Ethan's activities. As the boys emerged from the building, engrossed in animated conversation about their project, Jack experienced a moment of profound gratitude. Despite everything, Ethan was adapting, healing, reclaiming childhood joys that had been temporarily overshadowed by trauma. "We decided to build a model of a nuclear reactor, Dad," Ethan announced as they approached. "Tommy's dad works at the power company and said he could help us make it really detailed." Jack exchanged greetings with Tommy's parents, who had become supportive allies during the difficult period following Melissa's arrest. Their normalizing presence in Ethan's life, inviting him for sleepovers, including him in family outings, had provided crucial stability when their own family structure had fractured. That evening, as the boys worked on their project at the kitchen table, Jack received another call from Davis with unexpected news. "We've identified a breach in Melissa's incarceration protocols," the commander reported without preamble. A corrections officer was caught attempting to deliver an unauthorized communication device to her cell. Jack moved out of earshot from the children. "Connected to Blackwood's organization?" "Unclear. The officer claims financial motivation rather than organizational loyalty, but we're investigating possible connections. The more immediate concern is the communication attempt itself. Someone is still trying to establish contact with Melissa despite her cooperation against the network. New players looking for intelligence about the organization's vulnerabilities," Jack suggested. "Or remnants of leadership seeking to determine exactly what she's revealed." "Possibly," Davis acknowledged. "But there's another angle we're considering. The device contained preloaded messaging with references to contingency assets and leveraging the child. Some fraction of the organization may still view Ethan as a viable target." The information triggered Jack's protective instincts, but he maintained analytical discipline. "Assessment of current threat level? Moderate, but increasing. We've enhanced Melissa's security protocols and isolated her from general population. I've also authorized additional surveillance for your residents through next week while we identify the source of this attempt." After ending the call, Jack performed a comprehensive security check of the property while maintaining a casual demeanor to avoid alarming Ethan or his friend. The revelation that elements of Blackwood's organization potentially remained focused on Ethan despite the network's disruption confirmed Jack's decision to maintain enhanced security measures despite the apparent resolution. Once Tommy had been collected by his parents and Ethan was occupied with shower and bedtime routines, Jack contacted Mike to discuss this development. "Not surprising," Mike commented after Jack relayed Davis's information. "Organizations this sophisticated build redundancies and contingency protocols. The leadership we've identified and neutralized likely represents only the operational level, not the true power structure. Financial forensics should be revealing the deeper connections," Jack noted, "unless those connections were specifically designed to resist conventional investigation." Remember what Keller said about the board? Regional directors reported upward through intermediaries, maintaining separation between operational elements and strategic leadership. The conversation reinforced Jack's growing certainty that their victory remained incomplete. While the immediate threat had been neutralized and Blackwood's visible infrastructure dismantled, the possibility of renewed targeting suggested deeper resources and longer-term strategic thinking than they had initially assessed. After ensuring Ethan was settled for the night, Jack established a secure connection to Sentinel's systems, initiating a project he had been developing privately. A comprehensive intelligence analysis focused on identifying patterns and anomalies in Blackwood's operational history that might reveal the true power behind the organization. Dawn found him still working, correlating financial transactions, property acquisitions, and personnel movements across a 20-year timeline. The emerging pattern suggested coordination beyond Blackwood's capabilities, pointing toward involvement of legitimate business entities and potentially political connections that provided the network's true resilience. Over breakfast, Jack maintained his focus on Ethan's needs despite his concern about these developments. They discussed the science project, weekend plans, and Ethan's upcoming birthday. Deliberate normalcy as psychological countermeasure against lingering anxiety. "Dad?" Ethan said suddenly, looking up from his cereal. "Is Mom going to try to take me away again?" The directness of the question caught Jack off guard. "No, buddy. The court has made sure that can't happen. Mom is going to be away for a long time, and even when she's released, she won't be allowed to contact you unless you want that when you're older." Ethan nodded, processing this information. Tommy's mom said on the news that Mom helped catch the bad people. Is that true? Jack chose his words carefully, balancing truth with age-appropriate explanation. Mom did provide information that helped the authorities find people in Derek's organization. That's why her punishment isn't as severe as it might have been. But that doesn't change what she did or make it okay. I still don't understand why she did it. Ethan admitted, vulnerability evident in his expression. Didn't she love us anymore? Jack moved to sit beside his son, placing an arm around his shoulders. I believe Mom loves you in her way, but she made choices based on what she wanted rather than what was best for you. Sometimes adults make terrible decisions even when they should know better. The conversation continued with Ethan asking increasingly sophisticated questions about his mother's actions and motivations, evidence of his ongoing attempt to make sense of the traumatic disruption to his family. Jack answered each question honestly while emphasizing the stability and security of their current situation. Later that morning, after dropping Ethan at school, Jack met with Rebecca Walsh to discuss the legal implications of the attempted communication with Melissa. It potentially violates terms of her plea agreement, Rebecca confirmed, depending on whether she solicited the communication or was an unwilling recipient. The prosecutor has already filed notice of potential agreement breach. If the agreement is voided, what happens with her testimony against Blackwood's organization? Jack asked, considering strategic implications, already entered into evidence and corroborated through other sources. The legal dismantling continues regardless of her compliance moving forward. Rebecca studied Jack's expression. You're concerned this represents renewed targeting of Ethan. Davis thinks it's possible. The messaging referenced leveraging the child. Rebecca's expression hardened. She had become personally invested in Ethan's case, her professional detachment yielding to genuine concern for his welfare. I'll push for complete communication blackout as part of any modified agreement. No visitors, no mail, no phone privileges except with counsel. After the meeting, Jack drove to Sentinel's offices for his first full day back since the airport incident. The company had maintained operations under Mike's leadership, but clients had begun asking specifically for Jack's involvement in high-sensitivity projects. His expertise remained the firm's most valuable asset. The office atmosphere reflected the team's awareness of recent events, colleagues offering support through professional respect rather than intrusive sympathy. Jack appreciated this approach, focusing on technical challenges rather than personal trauma as a form of occupational therapy. During lunch, Mike provided updates on security arrangements for Ethan's upcoming birthday celebration, a small gathering of friends at an indoor rock climbing facility that could be secured more effectively than their home. The facility has agreed to exclusive access during our time frame, Mike confirmed. Single entry point, full camera coverage, our security team integrated with their staff. As secure as possible while maintaining normal appearance. Jack nodded appreciation. Ethan's excited about it. Having something positive to anticipate has been therapeutic. The conversation shifted to business matters until Mike's phone alerted with a security notification. Perimeter breach at your residence, he reported, immediately accessing the security feed on his tablet. Motion sensors activated in the backyard. Security team responding. Jack watched tensely as the video showed two figures in dark clothing examining exterior access points before retreating when security personnel approached. The incident lasted less than 40 seconds, but confirmed his ongoing concerns about Ethan's safety despite Blackwood's incarceration and network disruption. Not professionals, Mike assessed, studying the footage. Movements too hesitant, lack of coordinated approach. Possibly local criminals exploiting media coverage of your situation, thinking the house might contain valuable evidence or assets. Or deliberate testing of security response, Jack countered. Probing for weaknesses using expendable assets rather than skilled operatives. This interpretation aligned with tactics Jack had encountered during his military intelligence career, using low-level criminals or addicts as unwitting reconnaissance, sacrificing them to evaluate security measures before committing valuable operational personnel. Jack immediately contacted Davis to report the incident, sharing the video footage and his analysis of potential implications. The commander agreed with Jack's assessment, authorizing additional federal resources to supplement the private security already in place. We intercepted another attempt to communicate with Melissa this morning, Davis revealed. Different corrections officer, same basic approach. This suggests organizational involvement rather than individual initiative. Have you identified the source? Working on it. The communication device contains sophisticated encryption that our technical team is still processing. But preliminary analysis suggests European origin, possibly Swiss. The Swiss connection reinforced Jack's suspicion about deeper infrastructure beyond Blackwood's visible operation. Switzerland had featured prominently in financial transactions related to the organization, with Geneva specifically mentioned in communications between Melissa and Christine Winters. That evening, after collecting Ethan from his therapy session, Jack maintained heightened awareness while establishing a deliberately calm home environment. They prepared dinner together, discussed Ethan's day at school, and played chess, a game Ethan had recently developed interest in and displayed natural aptitude for. Checkmate, Ethan announced triumphantly after a particularly strategic series of moves. Jack studied the board with genuine surprise. That was brilliant, buddy. Where did you learn that approach? Mrs. Cooper's husband taught me, Ethan explained. He said sometimes the best move isn't the most obvious one. The innocent comment resonated with Jack's current strategic thinking regarding the threats against them. Perhaps their approach had been too direct, too focused on visible operational elements rather than the less obvious power structures supporting Blackwood's organization. After Ethan went to bed, Jack returned to his intelligence analysis project, incorporating this new perspective. If Blackwood represented a visible piece in a larger game, who was the player moving that piece? The financial connections suggested possibilities: banking interests, investment firms, perhaps even sovereign wealth funds operating through multiple layers of separation. His phone interrupted this analysis with a call from Davis. Federal marshals just intercepted an extraction team at Melissa's detention facility. The commander reported without preamble. For operatives with tactical equipment and facility blueprints. This wasn't a communication attempt. It was a rescue operation. Jack processed this escalation with cold clarity. Motivation? Unknown. But timing suggests desperation. Melissa's detailed testimony is being incorporated into international warrants against previously untouchable figures. Someone wanted to silence her before those warrants are executed, or extract her for interrogation regarding exactly what she's revealed, Jack suggested. Either way, it confirms ongoing organization despite leadership arrests. We're moving her to a secure federal facility with blackout protocols, Davis continued. But this development suggests the threat assessment for you and Ethan requires adjustment. Whoever orchestrated this extraction attempt has resources beyond what we initially estimated. After ending the call, Jack performed another comprehensive security check before returning to his analysis with renewed urgency. The attempted extraction of Melissa represented a significant escalation, suggesting resources and determination beyond typical criminal organizations. Such capability indicated state-level involvement or immense private wealth, or both. As he continued correlating data points, a pattern emerged around a Swiss investment firm called Helvetica Global Partners. This entity appeared peripherally in financial transactions connected to properties used by Blackwood's operation, always through at least 3 levels of shell companies and intermediaries. The firm maintained no public profile despite managing billions in assets, with office locations in Geneva, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands. Jack initiated deeper research into Helvetica Global, discovering connections to legitimate businesses, political figures, and intelligence services across multiple countries. The emerging picture suggested not merely a criminal enterprise, but a sophisticated private intelligence organization with nearly unlimited resources and high-level protection. The implications were disturbing but clarifying. If Blackwood's operation represented merely the operational arm of such an organization, their disruption efforts had addressed symptoms rather than the disease itself. The attempted extraction of Melissa and continuing interest in Ethan indicated the parent organization remained intact and operational despite law enforcement success against visible components. Jack documented his findings in an encrypted file, deciding against immediate sharing with Davis until he could verify key connections. The potential involvement of legitimate businesses and political figures required absolute certainty before acting. Accusations at this level without ironclad evidence would be dismissed as conspiracy theories. As dawn approached, Jack completed his initial analysis with a sobering conclusion. The threat to Ethan hadn't diminished as they believed. It had merely paused while the organization assessed and adapted. Their apparent success had created a dangerous false sense of security that could be exploited by patient adversaries. This realization demanded strategic recalibration. Jack's military training had taught him that underestimating an adversary's resources was potentially fatal. If Helvetica Global truly represented the power behind Blackwood's operation, their conventional approach, legal prosecution, asset seizure, intelligence gathering, would ultimately fail against an entity with such deep resources and political protection. A more direct approach would be required, one that bypassed conventional channels and struck at vulnerabilities even powerful organizations couldn't eliminate. The following morning at breakfast, Jack maintained a calm demeanor while processing these revelations. Ethan seemed more animated than usual, excited about his upcoming birthday celebration and the science project he'd completed with Tommy. Mrs. Cooper said our reactor model might win first prize, he reported proudly. We included safety systems that real nuclear plants use. Jack smiled genuinely, his son's enthusiasm momentarily displacing strategic concerns. That's impressive, buddy. When is the science fair again? Next Thursday. You'll be there, right? Ethan's question carried the weight of past disappointments. School events Melissa had missed, promises broken during the period of her deception. Absolutely, Jack assured him. Nothing could keep me away. After dropping Ethan at school, Jack initiated the next phase of his investigation into Helvetica Global. Rather than working through conventional intelligence channels, which might trigger alerting mechanisms within the organization, he leveraged Sentinel's legitimate business operations as cover. We need to approach this laterally, Jack explained to Mike during their secure meeting. Direct investigation will alert them. Instead, we use Sentinel's cybersecurity contracts as access points to gather peripheral data. The strategy exploited Sentinel's position as security consultant to several financial institutions with connections to Helvetica Global's legitimate operations. By conducting enhanced security audits for these clients, Jack could access transaction patterns and relationship mappings without explicitly targeting the Swiss firm. It's technically within legal parameters, Mike observed, but definitely pushing boundaries. Boundaries were crossed when they targeted my son, Jack replied coldly. Everything else is just calibrating the response. Over the next 3 days, Jack built a comprehensive intelligence profile of Helvetica Global while maintaining his focused presence for Ethan's daily routines. The picture that emerged confirmed his worst suspicions while revealing unexpected vulnerabilities. Helvetica functioned as a private intelligence and operational resource for a select client base of ultra-wealthy individuals seeking services beyond legal boundaries. Their primary business involved problem-solving for clients willing to pay premium rates for guaranteed results, whether those problems involved business competitors, political obstacles, or personal complications like custody disputes. Most significantly, Jack identified Helvetica's founder and chairman, Wilhelm Krieger, a former Swiss intelligence officer who had transformed his government expertise into a private enterprise serving clients of sufficient wealth and discretion. Krieger maintained no public profile, but his operational fingerprints appeared consistently in Helvetica's methodology. On Ethan's birthday, Jack temporarily set aside his investigation to focus entirely on his son's celebration. The indoor rock climbing facility had been secured according to protocols Mike established, with security personnel disguised as staff members and comprehensive monitoring of all access points. "This is awesome, Dad," Ethan exclaimed as he scaled a challenging route under the guidance of an instructor. His friends cheered his progress, the children blissfully unaware of the security envelope surrounding their celebration. Jack watched his son's joyful determination with profound gratitude. Despite the trauma they'd experienced, Ethan displayed remarkable resilience, a quality Jack recognized from his own life journey through loss and betrayal. The celebration proceeded without incident, though Jack noticed a vehicle conducting surveillance from the commercial lot across the street. Expected monitoring rather than immediate threat, likely federal assets rather than hostile operatives based on positioning and visibility choices. That evening, after Ethan had fallen asleep surrounded by new birthday gifts, Jack received a secure message from a contact within Swiss financial intelligence, a former colleague from his military days now working with regulatory authorities in Bern. "Your inquiry regarding HGP triggered internal alerts. Significant protective mechanisms in place. Suggest extreme caution in further investigation. Entity has political protection at highest levels." The warning confirmed Jack's assessment while underscoring the risks of conventional approaches. An organization with such protection could neutralize legal threats through influence rather than direct action, rendering traditional law enforcement efforts ultimately futile. Jack's response strategy crystallized around a fundamental military principle. When facing a superior conventional force, asymmetric warfare provides the only viable path to victory. Rather than attacking Helvetica's strengths, its financial resources, political connections, and operational infrastructure, he would target the one irreplaceable asset of any clandestine organization, its reputation for absolute reliability and discretion. The following morning, Jack contacted Davis to provide a carefully edited version of his findings, enough to justify continued federal resources for Ethan's protection without revealing his planned approach against Helvetica. "The extraction attempt against Melissa connects to a larger entity," Jack explained. "A private intelligence firm operating from Switzerland but with global reach. They view her testimony as an existential threat to their operational security. Swiss jurisdiction complicates our approach," Davis noted. "International warrants require evidence standards we haven't yet met. Exactly why enhanced protection remains essential," Jack agreed, deliberately emphasizing the defensive aspects rather than his developing offensive strategy. After concluding the call, Jack initiated the next phase of his plan, establishing a secure operational base separate from both his home and Sentinel's offices. Using resources from his military days, he leased a commercial property through multiple shell companies, creating a facility that combined technological capabilities with physical security. Mike surveyed the space with professional appreciation. "Reminds me of our forward operating base in Kandahar. Off official grids, but fully functional." "Same principle," Jack confirmed. "We need operational security Helvetica can't penetrate through conventional channels." The facility became the center of Jack's counterstrike planning. While maintaining his daily routines with Ethan and his professional responsibilities at Sentinel, he devoted night hours to mapping Helvetica's vulnerabilities and developing exploitation strategies. The breakthrough came through financial pattern analysis rather than direct investigation. By correlating data from multiple client security audits, Jack identified a recurring transaction pathway that suggested Helvetica maintained operational accounts under sophisticated but detectable concealment. Most significantly, these accounts connected to a specific transmission node in Singapore, a potential access point to Helvetica's internal communications infrastructure. "It's their operational weakness," Jack explained to Mike as they reviewed the findings. "Their legitimate financial operations maintain appropriate security, but their operational accounts require more flexible access for field activities. That creates vulnerability. What's the approach?" Mike asked, recognizing the strategic shift from intelligence gathering to active countermeasures. Precision targeting of reputation rather than assets, Jack replied. Helvetica's value proposition to clients is absolute reliability and discretion. We undermine that perception through targeted disclosure of client operations. The strategy leveraged Jack's cybersecurity expertise to access Helvetica's operational communications through the Singapore node, extracting client operation details without alerting internal security systems. Rather than stealing financial assets or disrupting operations directly, Jack would selectively expose client activities to regulatory authorities, creating cascading trust issues among Helvetica's client base. As Jack refined this approach, Davis reported another significant development. Federal authorities in 3 countries have executed coordinated raids based on Melissa's testimony. 38 arrests, including 2 individuals identified as Helvetica global operatives. Evidence recovery ongoing. This escalation suggested Helvetica would likely accelerate their operational timeline regarding both Melissa and Ethan. Jack's countermeasures would need to deploy before they could reorganize and attempt another extraction or acquisition operation. The strategy's implementation required precise timing and flawless technical execution. Using Sentinel's legitimate security infrastructure as cover, Jack established a sophisticated intrusion pathway into Helvetica's operational communications, leveraging the Singapore node as the initial access point. The technical challenge was substantial but not insurmountable for someone with Jack's specialized expertise. Over 3 consecutive nights, working from the secure facility while Mike maintained protective overwatch at his home with Ethan, Jack penetrated Helvetica's operational security layers. "I'm in their command and control infrastructure," he reported to Mike via secure communication. Access to operational directives, client communications, and field operative assignments. The intelligence revealed confirmed Jack's assessment of Helvetica's nature while providing actionable details about current operations, including continuing plans regarding Ethan. "They haven't abandoned the objective," Jack noted grimly. "They've adjusted approach methodology but still categorize Ethan as a primary acquisition target for leverage against my cybersecurity expertise." Most significantly, the communications revealed Wilhelm Krieger's direct involvement in operational planning. Unusual for an organization typically maintaining rigorous separation between leadership and field activities. This anomaly suggested personal interest in the outcome, potentially connected to high-value client priorities. With access established, Jack implemented the core of his counterstrike strategy: selective exposure of client operations to appropriate regulatory and law enforcement entities worldwide. Rather than a comprehensive data dump that might be dismissed as a criminal hack, he orchestrated precision disclosure of specific operations to authorities with jurisdiction and motivation to act. Financial fraud investigations in Singapore. Tax evasion evidence to authorities in Germany. Money laundering documentation to regulators in the United Kingdom. Each disclosure carefully structured to appear as internal whistleblowing rather than external compromise, creating plausible alternative explanations for Helvetica's sudden vulnerability. Most critically, Jack exposed operations for 3 of Helvetica's most significant clients, individuals whose wealth and influence had previously rendered them untouchable. The evidence packages included transaction records, communications, and operational directives that created irrefutable proof of criminal activity conducted through Helvetica's resources. "The beauty of this approach," Jack explained to Mike, "is that it creates an impossible situation for Helvetica. Either they acknowledge external compromise of their systems, destroying their reputation for absolute security, or they confront the possibility of internal betrayal, which devastates operational trust." The impact materialized faster than even Jack had anticipated. Within 48 hours, regulatory authorities in multiple jurisdictions launched investigations into the exposed operations. Financial news outlets reported unusual scrutiny of several previously untouchable individuals. Banking partners severed relationships with Helvetica-connected entities, citing compliance concerns. Most tellingly, internal communications within Helvetica revealed growing paranoia about information security and potential insider threats. Operational directors implemented emergency compartmentalization protocols, restricting access and communications in ways that significantly impaired functional efficiency. They're imploding organizationally, Jack noted as they monitored the cascading effects. Leadership suspects internal betrayal. Operations teams can't access necessary resources. Clients are demanding explanations while simultaneously distancing themselves publicly. The strategy's effectiveness became undeniable when Jack intercepted emergency directives regarding ongoing operations, including explicit instructions to suspend all Harrington-related acquisition planning pending comprehensive security review. This operational pause provided the opening for Jack's final countermeasure: direct communication with Wilhelm Krieger himself. Using Helvetica's compromised communications infrastructure, Jack transmitted a message to Krieger's secure personal channel, a digital calling card that demonstrated the comprehensive nature of their vulnerability. Your organization has been comprehensively compromised. Client operations exposed. Security infrastructure mapped. Informational dead man switch established to release all operational data to global authorities upon specific triggering conditions. The Harrington acquisition objective ends now, permanently. Alternative outcome involves complete organizational destruction. The message included proof of access, snippets of Krieger's personal communications, financial transactions, and operational directives that could only be obtained through deep system penetration. Jack concluded with the terms of disengagement: formal classification of Ethan Harrington as permanently excluded from operational targeting, with explicit penalties for violation. Confirmation required through established emergency authentication protocols. This is not negotiable. The response came within hours, a terse acknowledgement using Helvetica's highest security authentication protocols, recognizing the organization's vulnerable position and accepting the terms as presented. Permanent exclusion of Ethan from operational consideration, with explicit acknowledgement of consequences for violation. While maintaining appropriate skepticism about Helvetica's trustworthiness, Jack recognized the pragmatic calculus behind their acceptance. His countermeasures had created an existential threat to their operational model. Abandoning one acquisition target, however valuable, represented a reasonable concession to preserve the larger enterprise. Most significantly, Jack had established a deterrence framework based not on legal protections or defensive security, but on demonstrated capability to inflict catastrophic damage to Helvetica's entire operational infrastructure. No security system, no legal protection, and no political influence could safeguard against the type of targeted exposure Jack had orchestrated. With this resolution in place, Jack focused on verifying Helvetica's compliance while maintaining appropriate security protocols for Ethan's daily activities. The federal investigation into Blackwood's operation continued expanding based on Melissa's testimony, with Davis reporting significant progress in dismantling the visible infrastructure. "We've seized assets in 11 countries," the commander confirmed. Operational capabilities effectively neutralized across North America and expanding to European connections. Jack acknowledged these developments while recognizing they addressed only the surface manifestation of a deeper system. Helvetica would adapt, restructure, and potentially re-emerge in modified form, but with a permanent exclusion zone around his family. 3 weeks after his counterstrike implementation, Jack received final confirmation of its effectiveness through intelligence channels. Helvetica Global Partners had initiated comprehensive restructuring, dissolving its existing operational framework and redistributing assets through new entities. Wilhelm Krieger had resigned from active management, citing health concerns that conveniently explained the organizational transformation. Most importantly, all surveillance and monitoring of Jack and Ethan ceased completely. The implicit acknowledgement of Jack's terms had become operational reality. The threat had been neutralized not through conventional victory, but through demonstrated mutual, assured destruction capability. This resolution allowed Jack to refocus on the most important aspect of their lives: Ethan's continued healing and their reconstruction of family bonds. While maintaining appropriate security awareness, he deliberately reduced the visible protective measures that had previously dominated their routines. Ethan's resilience continued to impress his therapists and teachers. The science project with Tommy won first prize at the school fair. His nightmares about being taken away decreased in frequency and intensity. Most significantly, he began asking fewer anxious questions about security and safety, gradually reclaiming the innocent confidence of childhood. One evening, as they worked together on homework at the kitchen table, Ethan asked a question that reflected his ongoing processing of recent events. "Dad, are the bad people really gone now? For good?" Jack considered how to balance honesty with reassurance. "The specific people who tried to take you are facing justice. Others might still exist, but they've learned an important lesson about consequences." "What lesson?" "That some lines should never be crossed," Jack explained, "and that a father will do absolutely anything to protect his son." Ethan nodded, seeming satisfied with this explanation. "Like how you always say you've got my back." "Exactly like that," Jack confirmed, reaching over to ruffle his son's hair. "Always and forever." As Ethan returned to his math problems, Jack reflected on the journey they'd navigated over recent months. The threat that had nearly torn their family apart had been neutralized through a combination of conventional law enforcement, private security measures, and his own unorthodox counterstrike against the ultimate source. Melissa remained in federal custody, her testimony continuing to generate arrests and asset seizures across Blackwood's former operational territory. Her occasional attempts to communicate with Ethan through authorized channels were respectfully declined by his therapist, who maintained that such contact would be counterproductive to his ongoing recovery. Jack harbored no illusion that their lives would ever return to what they had been before Melissa's betrayal. That foundation had been irreparably shattered, revealing structural weaknesses he had previously ignored or missed. Their new life together would be built on different ground, more honest, more resilient, and ultimately more authentic than what had existed before. Most importantly, Jack had demonstrated, to Helvetica, to Blackwood's organization, to anyone who might consider targeting them in the future, that his protection of Ethan acknowledged no boundaries. The ruthlessness he had displayed in dismantling Helvetica's operational security had sent an unmistakable message throughout certain circles. The consequences of threatening Jack Harrington's son were simply not worth any potential gain. As they finished homework and moved on to their evening routine, Jack felt a sense of cautious optimism about their future. The immediate threat had been eliminated. Longer-term concerns had been addressed through effective deterrence. Most importantly, Ethan was reclaiming the childhood experiences that had been temporarily disrupted. Whatever challenges might arise in the future, Jack knew with absolute certainty that his response would be guided by the same unwavering principle. When it came to his son's safety and well-being, there were no limits to what he would do, no lines he wouldn't cross, and no power he wouldn't challenge. Chapter 8. Echoes and Aftershocks. 6 months after neutralizing the Helvetica threat, Jack sat in the federal courthouse waiting room, reviewing security protocols on his tablet while preparing for the day's proceedings. Blackwood's trial had finally begun after numerous delays, with Jack scheduled to testify about the airport confrontation and the events leading to it. The wood-paneled room buzzed with quiet conversations among witnesses, attorneys, and federal agents. Jack maintained his isolation, preferring professional distance from the legal pageantry surrounding a conclusion he had effectively rendered irrelevant. Helvetica's operational disengagement had eliminated the true threat, making Blackwood's prosecution more symbolic than strategic from Jack's perspective. "Mr. Harrington?" Jack looked up to find a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. Her identification badge identified her as Special Agent Vivian Russell, FBI Transnational Organized Crime Division. "Agent Russell," Jack acknowledged with a professional nod. "What can I do for you?" She sat beside him, maintaining appropriate distance. "I wanted to introduce myself before your testimony. I've been overseeing the international aspects of the Blackwood investigation since the initial arrests." Jack studied her with measured assessment, detecting purpose beyond courtesy in her approach. "Quite a web you've been unraveling, from what Commander Davis has shared." "Indeed," she agreed, "though some aspects have proven more challenging than others, particularly regarding certain European connections that seemed to dissolve precisely when we developed solid intelligence on them." The reference to Helvetica's restructuring was subtle but unmistakable. Jack maintained his neutral expression, neither confirming understanding nor feigning ignorance. "Financial crimes leave electronic fingerprints," he offered noncommittally. "Sophisticated organizations adapt when they detect investigation. Russell's slight smile acknowledged the deliberate ambiguity of his response. Adaptation requires awareness. The timing of certain organizational changes suggested unusually accurate information about our investigative progress. Insider threats, perhaps. Large organizations often develop vulnerabilities through human factors. Perhaps, Russell conceded, studying him with increased intensity. Though some analysts suggested alternate theories involving external pressure applied. Jack met her gaze directly. Complex investigations generate multiple theories. I imagine the evidence determines which receive priority. Evidence has been unusually elusive regarding certain aspects, Russell noted. Almost as if key systems experience selective data corruption targeting specific operational details. The oblique reference to Jack's digital countermeasures, which had indeed included corrupting certain Helvetica data repositories to eliminate evidence of his intrusion, confirmed his assessment of Russell's purpose. She suspected his involvement but lacked provable evidence. Digital security is my professional focus, Jack acknowledged. Systems often contain vulnerabilities their designers never anticipated. Their conversation maintained this careful dance of implication and deflection for several minutes before Russell shifted to the upcoming testimony. Jack recognized her approach for what it was, professional recognition of his capabilities without explicit accusation of actions that, while technically illegal, had effectively advanced her own investigative objectives. Your testimony will significantly strengthen the prosecution's case, she concluded as a court officer approached to escort Jack to the courtroom. Particularly regarding the false documentation and attempted international transport of your son. Jack nodded, gathering his materials. I'm simply providing factual testimony about what occurred. The legal implications are for the prosecutors and jury to determine. Of course, Russell agreed, offering her card as they prepared to part. If you ever consider consulting opportunities with our cybersecurity division, I'd be interested in discussing possibilities. Your expertise would be valuable in certain challenging contexts. The subtle job offer, acknowledging his capabilities while offering legitimate channels for their application, represented a pragmatic response to what she likely suspected but couldn't prove. Jack accepted the card with appropriate professional courtesy, neither committing to nor rejecting the potential connection. His testimony proceeded, detailing the discovery of Melissa's plans, the evidence of false documentation, and the airport confrontation without emotional embellishment. Defense attorneys attempted to portray his actions as those of a controlling husband responding to a marital dispute rather than a father protecting his son from genuine danger, but Jack's calm recitation of factual evidence effectively countered this narrative. When questioned about his military and intelligence background, Jack acknowledged his training while emphasizing his current focus on private sector cybersecurity. The prosecution skillfully used these questions to highlight his professional assessment of threat indicators rather than allowing the defense to suggest excessive or unwarranted responses. As Jack exited the courtroom after completing his testimony, he noticed Blackwood studying him with calculated intensity, not anger or hatred, but something closer to professional assessment. The expression suggested Blackwood recognized something in Jack that others missed, a capacity for ruthless action when circumstances demanded it. Jack returned the assessment briefly before continuing out of the courtroom. Blackwood represented the visible manifestation of the threat, but had never been its true source. His prosecution, while satisfying conventional justice, addressed only surface symptoms of the deeper disease Jack had already neutralized through more direct methods. Outside the courthouse, Jack found Mike waiting in an unmarked vehicle, maintaining security protocols despite the reduced threat assessment. How'd it go? Mike asked as Jack settled into the passenger seat. As expected, defense tried typical character approaches but couldn't undermine the factual timeline. Jack checked his watch. We have 2 hours before Ethan's baseball practice. I want to review the school's security modifications before the new semester starts. Their conversation shifted to logistical matters as they drove toward Ethan's school, where security enhancements had been implemented under the guise of general safety upgrades. Jack had provided consulting services pro bono, ensuring protective measures blended seamlessly with normal school operations to avoid making Ethan feel targeted or different from classmates. The following day brought an unexpected development, Notification from Rebecca Walsh that Melissa had requested a supervised visit with Ethan. The request came through proper legal channels with support from her psychiatric team, who suggested controlled contact might benefit both Melissa's rehabilitation and Ethan's emotional processing. Her treatment team claims significant progress regarding acceptance of responsibility, Rebecca explained during their meeting. The request includes explicit acknowledgement of your authority to establish parameters and your presence throughout any interaction. Jack considered the request with careful analysis rather than emotional reaction. What does Dr. Benson think about potential impact on Ethan? She believes controlled exposure might help resolve lingering questions Ethan continues to process in therapy. His recent sessions have included increased references to confusion about his mother's choices. After further consultation with Ethan's treatment team, Jack agreed to a rigorously controlled meeting at a neutral facility with comprehensive professional support. The decision reflected his commitment to Ethan's long-term emotional health rather than his personal feelings about Melissa, which remained dominated by cold assessment of her betrayal. The meeting occurred 3 weeks later at a specialized family reunification center designed for sensitive custody situations. Ethan had been carefully prepared by Dr. Benson, understanding that the visit represented an opportunity for questions and closure rather than relationship restoration. Jack observed the interaction from an adjacent room with one-way visibility, accompanied by Dr. Benson and a federal observer. Melissa, supervised by both corrections personnel and her treatment provider, maintained appropriate boundaries while answering Ethan's questions with what appeared to be genuine effort at honesty. "Were you going to come back ever?" Ethan asked in one particularly poignant exchange. Melissa visibly struggled with the question before responding. "The truth is, I wasn't thinking clearly about the future. I was making choices based on what I wanted in the moment, not considering what would happen later or how it would affect you. Dad says sometimes people make bad choices even when they know better." "Your father is right," Melissa acknowledged, glancing toward the observation window with awareness of Jack's presence beyond. "I made very bad choices that hurt you deeply, and I will regret that for the rest of my life." The session continued for 40 minutes, with Ethan displaying remarkable composure while seeking answers to questions that had clearly troubled him for months. Jack recognized his son's strength and emotional intelligence with profound pride, seeing echoes of his own resilience in Ethan's direct approach to difficult truths. After the visit concluded, Dr. Benson assessed the interaction as constructively therapeutic for Ethan. He needed concrete answers to questions his imagination has been struggling with. The reality, while painful, is easier to process than the uncertainty he's been carrying. Jack nodded agreement, having observed the subtle relaxation in Ethan's body language as the session progressed. Will additional contact be beneficial, or would it confuse his adjustment progress? Limited, structured interactions might be helpful as he continues processing, Dr. Benson suggested. But with clear boundaries regarding Melissa's role in his life moving forward, a biological connection he can understand without expectations of maternal relationship restoration. This framework guided Jack's approach to subsequent contact requests, establishing a carefully managed protocol that prioritized Ethan's psychological needs above all other considerations. The boundaries remained clear. Jack maintained sole custody and decision-making authority, with Melissa's involvement limited to structured therapeutic interactions. Throughout this period, Jack maintained vigilant monitoring of potential threats despite Helvetica's operational disengagement. The countermeasures he had implemented included ongoing surveillance of key indicators that would signal any reconsideration of their agreement. These technical tripwires, established throughout financial and communication systems Helvetica utilized, would provide early warning of compliance violations. This vigilance proved warranted 8 months after Blackwood's conviction, when Jack's monitoring systems detected unusual pattern shifts in peripheral financial channels previously connected to Helvetica operations. The changes suggested organizational restructuring rather than renewed targeting, but he expanded surveillance capabilities as a precautionary measure. Davis provided additional context during their regular security briefing. Intelligence suggests Helvetica has essentially dissolved its previous operational structure. Krieger has effectively retired to a private compound in New Zealand. Their client base has redistributed to multiple smaller entities without the centralized coordination that made them particularly dangerous. Entropy or strategic dispersion? Jack questioned, considering alternative interpretations. Assessment leans toward genuine dissolution, Davis replied. Your son hasn't appeared in any intelligence regarding operational targeting since the structural collapse. Resources previously allocated to your family have been definitively reassigned. This assessment aligned with Jack's own monitoring, which showed no targeted collection against either himself or Ethan for over 6 months. The combination of legal consequences for Blackwood's operation, Melissa's ongoing cooperation with authorities, and Jack's direct countermeasures against Helvetica had effectively eliminated the threat ecosystem that had previously targeted their family. This resolution allowed Jack to gradually normalize their living patterns, reducing security measures to unobtrusive baseline protocols that wouldn't interfere with Ethan's healthy development. School activities, sports participation, and friendships expanded with appropriate monitoring, but without the hypervigilance that had characterized the initial threat period. 1 year after the airport incident, Jack received an unexpected communication, a heavily encrypted message from Wilhelm Krieger himself, routed through multiple anonymizing services that nonetheless failed to prevent Jack's detection systems from identifying the source. The message was brief but consequential. Our previous understanding remains operational despite organizational changes. Permanent exclusion status maintained regardless of client interest. Professional respect for demonstrated capabilities necessitates this clarification during transition. Jack interpreted this communication accurately. Krieger, despite stepping back from operational leadership, had ensured the protection parameters established through Jack's countermeasures would survive Helvetica's reorganization. The message represented both professional acknowledgement and pragmatic self-interest, recognizing that Jack's demonstrated capabilities made targeting his family prohibitively costly regardless of organizational structure. The communication received no direct response, but accomplished its apparent purpose of confirming continued mutual understanding. Jack adjusted monitoring parameters to account for the identified organizational transitions while maintaining core defensive capabilities against potential future threats. This period of relative security allowed Jack to refocus on constructive aspects of their lives together. Ethan's academic progress accelerated with increased emotional stability. His participation in baseball created new social connections and confidence. Most significantly, the therapeutic support had helped him develop healthy perspective on his mother's actions and limitations. Jack's professional life similarly evolved, with Sentinel expanding into specialized security consulting for organizations facing sophisticated threats. The firm's reputation for addressing complex challenges attracted high-value clients seeking protection against threats conventional security firms couldn't effectively counter. The balance Jack maintained, between vigilance and normalcy, between protection and developmental freedom, reflected his fundamental understanding that complete security required both defensive capabilities and offensive deterrence. Ethan's safety derived not just from physical protection measures, but from the established understanding that targeting him would trigger consequences no rational adversary would willingly accept. This equilibrium faced an unexpected test 18 months after the airport incident, when Jack received an urgent call from Davis while attending Ethan's baseball championship game. "We have a situation," the commander began without preamble. Melissa was attacked during transport between facilities. Professional hit, 2 corrections officers down, extraction team of at least 4 operatives. Current status unknown. Jack processed this information while maintaining his outward composure in the crowded bleachers. Assessment of connection to previous threats? Unclear. Methodology suggests different operational signature than Blackwood's organization or Helvetica. Possibly unrelated actors who identified her as valuable due to her testimony or her connection to you. Current protective status for Ethan? Enhanced measures implemented as precautionary protocol. Additional agents en route to your location. No specific intelligence suggesting targeting, but pattern recognition indicates potential escalation risk. Jack surveyed the baseball field where Ethan was warming up with teammates, completely unaware of emerging concerns. The hard-won normalcy they had established over months of gradual healing now faced potential disruption from an unexpected quarter. Acknowledged, Jack responded, shifting to operational mode while maintaining his external appearance as an engaged parent. I'll secure Ethan personally once the game concludes. Coordinate additional resources through Mike's team rather than visible federal presence unless threat assessment changes. The baseball game proceeded without incident, with Jack maintaining heightened awareness while ensuring Ethan experienced his championship moment without security shadows. His team's victory provided natural cover for Jack's protective proximity during post-game celebrations. Later that evening, after securing their home with enhanced measures and ensuring Ethan settled into normal routines, Jack connected remotely to his intelligence-gathering infrastructure. If new threats were emerging, they would leave identifiable patterns across the monitoring framework he had established. The initial analysis revealed no activation of previously identified threat indicators. Whatever organization had targeted Melissa, it appeared unconnected to Helvetica's remnants or Blackwood's former network, a new player with unknown motivation rather than resurgence of previous adversaries. This assessment changed the following morning with Davis's update. Melissa has been recovered. Extraction team neutralized by federal response team. One survivor in custody. Preliminary interrogation suggests contract operation funded through cutouts, but source appears to be tied to financial entities previously connected to Helvetica's client base. Jack processed this revelation with focused analysis. Not Helvetica directly, but former clients operating independently? That's our working theory. Possibly individuals affected by the exposure operations that occurred during Helvetica's collapse, targeting Melissa as either revenge or to prevent further testimony against their interests. The pattern suggested a concerning possibility. While Helvetica as an organization had honored their disengagement agreement regarding Ethan, individual clients impacted by Jack's countermeasures might pursue separate agendas without the constraint of organizational discipline. This represented a more diffuse threat landscape than the centralized operations they had previously neutralized. Melissa's status? Jack inquired, considering strategic implications. Physically unharmed, but psychologically shaken. Security protocols enhanced to prevent further attempts. Her testimony in upcoming international cases remained scheduled. This development required tactical adjustment rather than strategic recalibration. Jack implemented additional monitoring parameters focused on independent actors potentially connected to former Helvetica clients, while maintaining core security protocols for Ethan's daily activities. The most significant challenge involved determining whether to adjust Ethan's routines in response to this potential threat evolution. After careful consideration and consultation with Dr. Benson, Jack decided against major disruptions to Ethan's stabilized patterns, instead implementing enhanced security measures designed for minimal visibility and impact on his son's daily experience. Davis provided updated intelligence 3 days later that supported this approach. Captured operative has confirmed the operation targeted only Melissa, specifically to prevent testimony in upcoming European financial crime cases. No indication of targeting Ethan or operational interest in your family as leverage. While maintaining appropriate skepticism, Jack acknowledged this assessment aligned with observed patterns. The attack on Melissa represented targeted revenge or operational containment by specific affected parties rather than resurrection of the broader threat matrix previously dismantled. This incident, while concerning, ultimately reinforced Jack's confidence in the effectiveness of his countermeasures against Helvetica. The organization's operational disengagement had remained intact despite opportunities for re-engagement, suggesting their risk assessment regarding Jack's deterrence capabilities remained valid despite leadership transitions. Most importantly, Ethan continued his remarkable recovery, developing healthy coping mechanisms and emotional resilience that would serve him throughout life. His understanding of security measures evolved towards seeing them as practical tools rather than responses to imminent danger, a perspective Jack deliberately cultivated through age-appropriate explanations and normalization. As the second anniversary of the airport incident approached, Jack received notification of another procedural development. Melissa had become eligible for supervised work release as part of her cooperation agreement. The prosecutor's office sought Jack's input regarding potential impact on Ethan should this information become public. Jack consulted with Ethan's treatment team before responding, prioritizing his son's emotional welfare above legal or security considerations. Dr. Benson's assessment proved valuable. Ethan has developed substantial resilience regarding his mother's situation. Appropriate preparation for this development should minimize negative impact, particularly if presented as an expected part of the legal process rather than a significant change in status. With this guidance, Jack authorized appropriate disclosure to Ethan, framed within the ongoing narrative of legal consequences and rehabilitation they had established through previous discussions. Ethan's response demonstrated his developing maturity. Questions focused on pragmatic details rather than emotional reactions, suggesting healthy integration of his mother's status into his broader understanding of their family situation. This development coincided with Jack's detection of another significant pattern shift in former Helvetica operational indicators. His monitoring systems identified dissolution of financial structures previously associated with the organization's client services, suggesting further fragmentation of capabilities rather than reconsolidation under new leadership. Davis confirmed this assessment through official channels. Intelligence indicates former Helvetica operational resources have been permanently dispersed. No evidence of centralized coordination capacity for complex operations like those previously targeting your family. The combination of these developments, Melissa's established legal pathway, Ethan's continued healing, and confirmation of threat reduction, allowed Jack to implement the next phase of their recovery journey: gradual normalization of security protocols to baseline levels appropriate for high-value individuals rather than specific targeting concerns. This transition represented significant progress from the crisis-level measures implemented during peak threat periods, though Jack maintained core monitoring capabilities and contingency responses as permanent life features. The ruthlessness he had demonstrated in dismantling Helvetica's operational capabilities had established effective deterrence, but experience had taught him that vigilance remained necessary even in victory. The most meaningful measure of their recovery came through Ethan's continuing development. His academic performance, social relationships, and emotional stability all reflected successful integration of difficult experiences into a resilient personal framework. The traumas he had experienced, while significant, had been processed with appropriate support into sources of strength rather than lingering vulnerability. Jack recognized his own transformation as well, from reactive defender to proactive strategist, from conventional security practitioner to asymmetric countermeasure specialist. The skills developed during the crisis period now informed both his professional offerings through Sentinel and his personal security philosophy. Most importantly, Jack's relationship with Ethan had deepened through shared adversity and recovery. Their bond, tested by crisis and strengthened through healing, represented the true victory among all operational successes. Whatever residual threats might emerge from the shadows of past conflicts, Jack knew with absolute certainty that the foundation of their relationship would withstand any challenge. Chapter 9: Reckoning and Reconciliation. 3 years after the airport confrontation, Jack stood at the edge of a college baseball field watching Ethan participate in a summer recruitment camp for high school prospects. At 11, Ethan was younger than most participants but had been invited based on exceptional performance in regional youth leagues. His athletic development had paralleled his academic and emotional growth, disciplined, resilient, and remarkably balanced for a child who had experienced such profound disruption. "He's got a natural swing," observed a voice beside Jack. "Smooth mechanics, excellent timing." Jack turned to find Linda Cooper watching the practice with professional assessment. Now Ethan's middle school principal rather than elementary teacher, she had continued as a stabilizing presence in his educational journey. "The coaches think he has serious potential," Jack acknowledged, "though I'm more impressed by his teamwork than his technical skills." Linda nodded understanding. "That's the real victory, isn't it? His ability to trust, to form healthy relationships despite everything." Their conversation continued with shared appreciation for Ethan's progress, both academic and personal. The bond between them had evolved from professional alliance during crisis to genuine friendship built on mutual respect and shared commitment to Ethan's welfare. As they watched the practice, Jack's phone vibrated with a secure message from Davis. "Significant development regarding MM, requesting meeting at your convenience. No immediate security implications." Jack acknowledged receipt, while maintaining his focus on Ethan's practice session. Whatever Davis needed to discuss regarding Melissa could wait until he had fulfilled his commitment to his son's important day. The recruitment camp concluded with coaches providing individualized feedback to each participant. Jack watched proudly as Ethan received his assessment with poised attention, asking thoughtful follow-up questions that reflected his genuine engagement with the process rather than ego or defensiveness. "Great job today." Jack congratulated him as they walked to the car afterward. "I was impressed with how you handled that difficult fielding sequence." Ethan grinned, comfortably accepting the praise. "Coach Ramirez showed me a different approach to my footwork. Made a huge difference in reaction time." Their conversation continued during the drive home, ranging from baseball techniques to an upcoming science competition Ethan had qualified for. The easy flow between serious topics and casual observations reflected the healthy communication patterns they had established through intentional effort during the recovery period. After ensuring Ethan was settled with homework and dinner preparations, Jack connected with Davis through secure channels to discuss the reference development. "Melissa has provided critical intelligence regarding a previously unidentified financial backer of Blackwood's operation," Davis explained without preamble. "Individual named Lawrence Palmer, American national operating primarily through Southeast Asian financial hubs." Jack processed this information with immediate recognition of its significance. Their previous intelligence had never fully illuminated the American financing connections that had enabled Blackwood's domestic operations. This represented a potentially significant missing piece in the network dismantling efforts. "Connection to Helvetica?" Jack inquired, considering strategic implications. "Independent operator rather than organizational component," Davis clarified. "Appears Palmer funded specific Blackwood operations for personal benefit without broader involvement in the network structure." The distinction was important, but raised concerning questions about motivation. "Why would an independent financial operator fund operations specifically targeting my family?" "That's the significant development," Davis continued. "Melissa's new information suggests Palmer's involvement wasn't initially connected to your family at all. He funded various Blackwood operations focused on assisting wealth clients with custody evasion. Your family became a target only after Melissa independently contacted Blackwood's organization seeking escape options." This revelation represented a substantial reframing of the original threat assessment. Rather than being specifically targeted by a sophisticated organization, Melissa had effectively inserted their family into an existing operational framework through her own initiative. "Palmer's current status?" Jack inquired, considering potential threat implications. "Federal indictment being prepared based on Melissa's testimony and corroborating financial evidence. Assets under surveillance, but not yet frozen to avoid operational alerting. No indication of awareness regarding Melissa's cooperation." Jack processed this development with careful analysis of security implications. If Palmer operated independently of Helvetica's network, he potentially represented a separate threat vector not covered by the deterrence framework established through Jack's countermeasures against the larger organization. "Threat assessment regarding Ethan?" he asked, prioritizing security considerations. "Minimal based on current intelligence," Davis responded. "Palmer's operational interest appears focused on financial returns rather than personal vendettas. No indication of resource allocation toward your family since Blackwood's arrest and Helvetica's operational disengagement." This assessment aligned with Jack's monitoring data, which had shown no activation of threat indicators for over 18 months. The development represented important intelligence regarding the original threat landscape, but didn't appear to create new security concerns requiring immediate response. The following week brought another significant development when Rebecca Walsh contacted Jack regarding an unexpected legal filing from Melissa. "She's petitioning for formal termination of all parental rights," Rebecca explained during their meeting. "Voluntary relinquishment rather than contested removal." Her attorney indicates this represents acknowledgement that Ethan's interests are best served through legal clarity regarding your sole parental authority. Jack considered this development with measured assessment rather than emotional reaction. Psychological evaluation supports genuine motivation rather than tactical positioning. Multiple evaluations confirm consistent recommendation from her treatment team, Rebecca confirmed. They've characterized it as evidence of significant therapeutic progress regarding acceptance of consequences and prioritization of Ethan's needs above personal desires. The petition included specific acknowledgments regarding Melissa's actions and their impact on Ethan, creating permanent legal record of her responsibility for the trauma inflicted through her choices. This framework established unambiguous foundation for Jack's continuing sole custody while potentially offering Ethan eventual therapeutic closure. After consultation with Ethan's treatment providers, Jack authorized consent to the petition with specific conditions regarding future contact parameters. The resulting court order established permanent legal severance of Melissa's parental rights while maintaining strictly controlled therapeutic contact options contingent on treatment professionals' ongoing assessment of benefit to Ethan. This legal resolution complemented the security resolution already established through Jack's countermeasures against Helvetica and federal actions against Blackwood's operation. The combination provided comprehensive protection through multiple frameworks: legal, security, and psychological, creating layered safeguards for Ethan's continuing development. The arrest of Lawrence Palmer occurred 3 months later, with federal authorities executing coordinated raids on properties in Washington, Singapore, and the Philippines. The indictment detailed extensive financial support for criminal enterprises, including Blackwood's operation, with specific charges related to funding operations involving international parental abduction and custody interference. Jack received this news with professional assessment rather than personal satisfaction. Palmer represented another component of the threat ecosystem now neutralized through conventional legal channels, complementing his own more direct countermeasures against organizational elements beyond legal reach. This development coincided with Ethan's 12th birthday, a milestone celebrated with appropriate recognition of his continuing recovery and growth. The party included school friends, baseball teammates, and adult supporters who had contributed to his journey, creating community celebration of his resilience rather than focusing exclusively on familial relationship. During the celebration, Jack observed his son's confident social interactions with deep appreciation for the healing that had occurred. Despite experiencing betrayal and trauma that would have permanently damaged many children, Ethan had developed remarkable capacity for trust, friendship, and joy, testaments to his inherent strength and the support framework Jack had established. Later that evening, after guests had departed and the house quieted, Ethan approached Jack with uncharacteristic hesitancy. "Dad, can I ask you something serious?" "Always," Jack assured him, setting aside his cleanup activities to give full attention. "Mom's lawyer sent Dr. Benson a letter for me," Ethan began carefully, "about her giving up her legal rights as my mother. Dr. Benson explained what it means, but I wanted to ask you directly. Why would she do this now?" Jack considered his response carefully, balancing honesty with age-appropriate explanation. "I believe she's finally recognized that your well-being needs to come before her desires or legal status. In some ways, it's one of the more responsible choices she's made regarding your future." Ethan processed this with thoughtful consideration beyond his years. "So, it's not about not wanting to be my mom anymore. It's about accepting she doesn't get to make decisions about my life because of what she did." "That's a very insightful way to understand it," Jack confirmed, impressed by his son's emotional intelligence. "It creates legal clarity that matches the reality we've been living, that I make the decisions about your care and future." Ethan nodded, seemingly satisfied with this framing. "Dr. Benson said I can still have contact with her if you approve and if she continues following her treatment plan. Does that seem fair to you?" The question reflected Ethan's developing capacity for complex ethical assessment, considering fairness beyond personal preference or emotional reaction. Jack recognized this as evidence of his son's remarkable maturity and healing. "I think that framework respects both the consequences of her actions and the potential benefit of controlled contact for your understanding and processing," Jack replied honestly. "My priority remains what's healthiest for you, not punishment or restriction for its own sake." This conversation represented significant milestone in their journey. Ethan's capacity to discuss his mother's status with emotional regulation and critical thinking rather than trauma response or defensive avoidance. The therapeutic support, combined with Jack's consistent honesty and security provisions, had created foundation for healthy integration of difficult realities. 3 months later, Jack received notification of another significant development. Wilhelm Krieger had died of apparent natural causes at his New Zealand compound. International financial publications reported the death with carefully neutral coverage of his consulting career, while intelligence channels provided more substantive assessment of implications for former Helvetica operational components. Krieger's death accelerates organizational diffusion already underway, Davis reported during their quarterly security review. Remaining operational elements have essentially dissolved into independent contractors without central coordination capability. Threat assessment regarding your family remains at baseline level with no specific indicators of targeting interest. Jack's own monitoring systems confirmed this assessment, showing continued absence of pattern indicators that would suggest renewed attention from either organizational remnants or independent actors previously connected to Helvetica or Blackwood's operation. The combination of legal consequences, operational dismantling, and demonstrated deterrence had effectively neutralized the threat ecosystem that had previously targeted their family. This resolution allowed Jack to implement final normalization of their security protocols, reducing measures to prudent baseline appropriate for high-value individuals without specific targeting concerns. While maintaining certain monitoring capabilities as permanent life features, he systematically dismantled crisis-level measures that no longer matched current threat assessment. The most meaningful indicator of successful resolution came through Ethan's continuing development across all dimensions: academic excellence, athletic achievement, emotional resilience, and social connection. His understanding of security considerations had matured into practical awareness rather than anxiety-driven hypervigilance, reflecting healthy integration of past experiences into balanced life perspective. On the 4th anniversary of the airport confrontation, Jack received a letter from Melissa through official channels, her first direct communication since the legal termination of parental rights. After security verification confirmed no hidden purposes or inappropriate content, Jack reviewed the letter with careful assessment of potential impact. The content reflected substantial psychological evolution from her previous communications. Rather than self-justification or manipulative positioning, Melissa offered genuine acknowledgement of the harm caused by her choices and recognition of the extraordinary parenting Jack had provided during challenging circumstances. Most significantly, she expressed acceptance of her permanently altered relationship with Ethan. "I recognize that my choices permanently altered my place in Ethan's life. The legal termination of my parental rights simply acknowledges what my actions had already created. I am grateful that your commitment to his well-being has given him the stability and security I failed to prioritize." After consultation with Ethan's treatment team regarding potential impact, Jack made the carefully considered decision to share portions of the letter with Ethan as part of his ongoing therapeutic processing. Dr. Benson facilitated this discussion, providing professional support for Ethan's integration of this new communication into his understanding of his mother's status. Ethan's response demonstrated his remarkable emotional maturity and healing progress. Rather than being destabilized by the communication, he engaged thoughtfully with its content, asking insightful questions about his mother's treatment progress and expressing measured appreciation for her acknowledgement of responsibility without unrealistic expectations regarding relationship restoration. As Ethan entered adolescence, his understanding of the extraordinary circumstances that had shaped his childhood deepened through age-appropriate conversations with Jack and continuing therapeutic support. These discussions included not just his mother's betrayal and Blackwood's operation, but also Jack's responsive actions, presented with appropriate context regarding protective motivation rather than explicit operational details. "You did whatever was necessary to keep me safe," Ethan observed during one such conversation shortly after his 13th birthday. "Even things that might have been technically against rules or laws." Jack acknowledged this assessment with careful honesty. There are moments in life when conventional boundaries become secondary to protecting what matters most. "I made choices based on ensuring your safety above all other considerations. I would have done the same," Ethan replied with conviction that suggested genuine understanding rather than idealized hero worship. "If someone I loved was threatened, there are some lines you don't cross, but protecting family isn't one of them." This perspective reflected Ethan's integration of their experiences into a coherent moral framework. one that acknowledged both ethical boundaries and contexts where conventional limitations might be transcended by higher priorities. Jack recognized the balanced wisdom in his son's developing worldview, neither rigidly absolutist nor relativistically unmoored. The years following brought continuing evolution of their relationship as Ethan navigated adolescence with the remarkable resilience and emotional intelligence that had characterized his recovery. Academic achievements, athletic accomplishments, and healthy social relationships reflected successful integration of difficult experiences into sources of strength rather than limiting trauma. Jack's professional life similarly evolved, with Sentinel developing specialized expertise in countering sophisticated threats against high-value targets. Expertise derived directly from his experiences protecting Ethan. The firm's reputation attracted clients facing complex security challenges beyond conventional defensive measures, establishing unique market position built on demonstrated capability rather than theoretical approaches. Periodically, Jack received intelligence updates from Davis regarding former components of Helvetica's operation and Blackwood's network. These reports consistently confirmed continued dismantling and diffusion rather than reconsolidation, with no indicators of renewed targeting interest regarding Jack's family. The most telling assessment comes from psychological profiling of former associates. Davis noted during one such update. When questioned about hypothetical operations against certain targets, your name consistently generates immediate disengagement response. Your reputation as someone who responds asymmetrically and effectively to threats against family has become an established deterrent within relevant communities. This reputation-based deterrence complemented the technical monitoring systems Jack maintained as permanent security infrastructure. The combination created layered protection framework sustained by both capability demonstration and continuing vigilance, a model Jack subsequently implemented for select Sentinel clients facing sophisticated persistent threats. As Ethan entered high school, Jack observed with profound satisfaction his son's healthy development despite the extraordinary challenges of his childhood. The resilience, emotional intelligence, and balanced perspective Ethan demonstrated represented the true measure of successful resolution, not just absence of active threat, but presence of thriving recovery. Most significantly, Ethan had developed nuanced understanding of his mother's status that neither idealized her nor demonized her. Through carefully structured therapeutic contact and honest discussions with Jack, he had constructed realistic assessment of Melissa as deeply flawed individual who had made catastrophic choices rather than cartoon villain or misunderstood victim. I understand why she did what she did, Ethan reflected during one particularly thoughtful conversation. Not that it was right or justified, but I can see how someone might make those choices step by step without fully considering consequences. It helps me make sure I never follow that kind of path myself. Jack recognized the profound wisdom in this perspective, the capacity to understand without excusing, to learn without internalizing, to find meaning without minimizing harm. Ethan had transformed potential trauma into source of insight and resilience through the support framework Jack had established and his own remarkable internal strength. The ultimate affirmation of their journey came not through security assessments or legal resolutions, but through Ethan's capacity for joy, connection, and purpose despite experiencing betrayal that might have permanently damaged his ability to trust. The baseball championships, academic honors, and healthy friendships reflected successful reclamation of childhood experiences that had been temporarily threatened. Jack's role had evolved as well, from crisis protector to developmental guide, from security provider to emotional mentor. The ruthlessness he had demonstrated when Ethan faced immediate danger had balanced with patience, wisdom, and selective vulnerability as their challenges shifted from tactical threats to developmental milestones. This evolution reflected Jack's fundamental understanding that true security encompassed not just physical protection, but emotional and psychological well-being. The measures required to address immediate threats differed from those supporting healthy development once those threats had been neutralized, a distinction Jack had navigated with remarkable effectiveness. 5 years after the airport confrontation, Lawrence Palmer's federal trial concluded with conviction on all charges and sentencing recommendations exceeding 30 years. Melissa's testimony had proved crucial to dismantling his financial network, with prosecutors acknowledging her cooperation as instrumental in securing justice in this complex international case. The conviction represented the final major legal proceeding directly connected to the original threat matrix targeting Jack's family. Blackwood, Helvetica's operational leadership, and Palmer, the primary financing component, had all faced comprehensive legal consequences, while Jack's direct countermeasures had neutralized elements beyond conventional jurisdiction. This comprehensive resolution allowed Jack and Ethan to focus entirely on forward momentum rather than lingering threat management. Their lives had reclaimed normalcy without forgetting the lessons of past challenges: vigilance balanced with openness, security integrated with growth, protection enabling rather than restricting development. Most importantly, their relationship had transformed the potential tragedy of maternal betrayal into triumph of paternal commitment and filial resilience. The bond between them, forged through crisis and strengthened through recovery, represented the true measure of successful resolution, not just surviving trauma, but transcending it to create deeper connection and meaning. As Jack watched Ethan take the field for his high school baseball team's championship game, he reflected on the extraordinary journey they had navigated together. The stadium lights illuminated his son's confident stance at shortstop, his teammates positioning with practiced coordination around him, his coach offering quiet guidance from the dugout. The scene embodied everything Jack had fought to preserve when confronted with the unthinkable at the airport 5 years earlier. Not just Ethan's physical presence in his life, but his opportunity for normal childhood experiences, healthy development, and future potential unconstrained by traumatic disruption. The ruthlessness Jack had demonstrated against those who threatened these fundamental priorities had been an appropriate response to existential threat. When conventional protections proved insufficient, he had deployed capabilities beyond normal boundaries because his son's welfare transcended those limitations. The message had been received with unmistakable clarity throughout relevant circles. Targeting Jack Harrington's son created consequences no rational adversary would willingly accept. With immediate threats neutralized through this demonstrated capacity for asymmetric response, Jack had then focused equal determination on creating environment for Ethan's healthy recovery and development. The same unwavering commitment that had dismantled Helvetica's operational security had subsequently built supportive framework for his son's emotional healing and resilience. As Ethan successfully fielded a difficult ground ball and made the throw to first with perfect form, Jack felt profound gratitude for the opportunity to witness this ordinary moment of adolescent achievement, an opportunity that might have been permanently lost without his extraordinary response to extraordinary threat. The journey had transformed them both in essential ways. Ethan had developed resilience, wisdom, and emotional intelligence beyond his years through successfully integrating difficult experiences. Jack had discovered capabilities, determination, and protective capacity he might never have recognized without facing such comprehensive threat to what he valued most. Most significantly, they had emerged from potential tragedy with deeper connection, clearer priorities, and stronger foundation for navigating future challenges together. Whatever difficulties might arise in years ahead, the bonds forged through this shared journey would provide resilience and perspective beyond what most father-son relationships ever develop. As the stadium erupted in cheers for a successful defensive play, Jack joined the applause with genuine appreciation for both the athletic achievement and the deeper victory it represented. His son's continuing opportunity for normal childhood experiences despite extraordinary attempts to deny him that foundation. The true triumph existed not just in neutralizing those who had targeted their family, but in ensuring their targeting ultimately failed to achieve its objective. Ethan remained where he belonged, with the father who had demonstrated through both ruthless protective action and patient supportive presence that nothing mattered more than his son's safety, well-being, and future potential. In this outcome lay the most meaningful victory of all. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.